Good evening. The Rancho Board of Education meeting for Monday, December 14th, 2020 is now called to order. We will start with a Pledge of Allegiance presented by Noreen Scott. If everyone could please rise and turn off your microphones.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much, Secretary Scott. Jane, can you take a roll call for us?
Yes, I will. President Galbraith,
Present.
Vice President Morgan,
Present.
Secretary Scott,
Present.
Board Member Cullen,
Present.
Board Member Coleman.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a quorum present tonight. We'd like to welcome everyone out to our meeting tonight. We'd like to welcome our presenters and also all of our district staff who will be also presenting tonight. We'd also like to thank all those who are joining in through YouTube. Welcome to our meeting tonight. Tonight we will get started off with some introductory comments by our superintendent, Dr. V. Sue Cleveland.
Good evening, and thank you all for being with us this evening. I have just a few remarks I would like to share with you, some things that have really developed as late this afternoon. So next slide, please. I think you probably have heard, but if you have not heard, in order to come back to in-person learning, we are going to have to test 10% of our instructional staff. And so we thought that was going to be a bit of a challenge. But it turns out it may be more of a challenge than we had originally anticipated. And so there's a lot of concern, obviously, about the number of cases that we might see in our state following winter break. And as you recall, we did survey our parents, our staff, our students as to whether they were going to be traveling over the break or not, or whether they would be having people coming into New Mexico from other places that would be staying with them. And so we have a significant number of families that were doing one of the two. Either they were leaving and coming back, or they had people coming in. And so the decision was made by the board to not resume in-person learning until the 19th of January. Since that time, the state has agreed with that for everyone. And so they are not allowing any in-person learning the first 2 weeks of January because of the amount of travel that they anticipate having. And as you probably are very much aware, the number of cases has been coming down. And so they don't want that to turn around and go the other direction after the holidays. So we have one of the things that they're requesting us to do is to test 10% of our staff on top of that. And this surveillance testing is going to be required before we can apply to reopen, even as early as January the 19th. So that's approximately 180 tests. Not all employees fall into that, but we will need to test 180 people in order to be considered for a reopening. And so this afternoon, late this afternoon, our HR staff participated in a training program for this testing. Now, I really kind of want to emphasize that this is brand new. We didn't know this was coming. We did not have hardly any warning that it was coming. And now here we are almost at the end of the semester. And we have to have this all in place in order to begin in January. So we've not had much time to research it. We haven't had any time to plan. And it is going to be a bit of a challenge. One of the concerns that we have, and I just want you to be aware of it, is that the testing is going to be done by a third-party vendor. And we don't know much about the vendor. I've done a little checking this afternoon. It appears that they're doing some similar work in the state of Minnesota, but we really don't know much about it. And here's the concerns that we have. We have concerns that they're going to have to show on the Zoom meeting their entrance card. And then on top of that, they're going to have to show their ID card, their staff ID card. and they're going to have to share their social security number, and then they have to take the test in front of a representative from this company in a Zoom meeting. And so that's pretty onerous, all of that. And we're kind of concerned about it. I put a call into the secretary late this afternoon, not heard back from him yet. He's really good about returning calls, so I'm sure I'll hear from him later this evening or in the morning. But I think some of our staff are going to see this as intrusive, particularly giving out that kind of information. And on top of that, we found a paragraph that said something about that information could be shared. And so what we will be asking for from the public ed department would be perhaps some assurances or other things that that information would not be sold, would not be shared. That's very private information. And I don't think, well, as you well know, our staff has in the past had concerns about even sharing their addresses. I don't know that it's going to be well received by our staff at all. So I was hoping to get some assurances from the secretary, also to be able to share some concerns, and they probably apply to some of those things and maybe already have some resolution to it. But that's kind of, it's going to be quite an interesting undertaking to try to get that done. The test would have to be done early in the week in order to have them back. You have to do them for 2 weeks. You have to have 10%. There's no margin of error there. If you don't have 10%, then you're not able to reopen. Mike was there this afternoon. He has a lot more information about this and can answer your questions better than I can. So I would like to turn this over to Mike Chavez. Let him share with you what he learned today and any concerns of his that I didn't cover, and other facts or information he would like you to know. So Mike, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Cleveland. Good evening, President Galbraith, Dr. Cleveland, members of the board. We did attend, and I'm going to ask Peggy Johnston to go ahead and join us so that she can fill in any gaps in my memory that I might have. But we did attend a training this afternoon, and I'll kind of run through the process with you real quickly. I do think that this process is going to be it's going to be challenging a little bit for some people, and we can work through that and we can help people. The process is going to be as follows. The PED or the DOH in combination have chosen a company called Vault, and Vault is the company that, is going to be doing the testing for the state, for the surveillance testing. And the way this is going to work is that the PED is going to provide us, the district, with a number of links, website links to this company Vault. And we will then provide those links to our randomly chosen employees who will be completing the surveillance testing. The employee will then have to go on and click this link. They will have to register. As part of that registration, as Dr. Cleveland has said, and Peggy, please stop me at any time and fill in whatever I'm saying wrong, but as part of that registration, what we understand is that they will have to complete all the information of pertaining to their insurance, and they will have to, our understanding is they'll have to hold up their insurance card so that they can have a picture taken of their insurance card as well. They'll also have to hold up their state issued ID and have a picture taken of their state issued ID in order to complete this registration. Once that registration has been completed, the Vault company will then UPS the test directly to the employee's home. The employee will then have to make arrangements for a Zoom meeting with this company, and will have to perform the test. It is a saliva-based test. It is not a nasal test, but they will have to perform the test in the presence over a Zoom meeting of one of the representatives of this company. And so we're not sure. I did ask the question today. I said, we're, expecting to have, quite a large number of individuals testing. And I was curious if they would have the capacity to handle that many, because the state is asking us, PED is asking us to accomplish this testing early in the week and have it sent off so that we can get the results by the end of the week. The employee will then have to package up the test, and we will have to make arrangements to collect those tests and then get all of those tests over to UPS in some fashion, and have those tests returned to this company vault through UPS. The employee will then receive the results through email, and they will have to share those results with us. As Dr. Cleveland said, we do have some questions about this. Part of the problem that we're having is that this was rolled out very, very quickly. There was not a lot of preparation on the district's behalf for this process, and there wasn't a lot of I don't know how you would say it, but there wasn't a lot of notification to us that this was going to be the new process. We had been used to doing the process through the Department of Health. We were a little surprised that this is a completely different process. And so we are working diligently and quickly to find out as much as we can about this company and how this process will work, and what the ramifications of using this company and doing this process are. Peggy, what did I miss?
You did a great job, Mike. The only thing I would add is if the employee didn't have access to a camera, for example, on their computer or tablet, they could actually by hand enter all of their information from their insurance card or their state ID card as well. Or my understanding is they have a spot to attach a PDF or a photo. But that's definitely something that's a bit concerning to us, is that we're talking about a private third party who's now going to have quite a bit of our personal information. And we just didn't get a chance to ask questions and come back to PED and or Vault with some of our questions yet. So we'd really appreciate some time to be able to think of that and consider those options, and also to allow you as the board to be able to consider some of those ramifications as well.
I'll stand for questions that the board might have about this.
Mike, this is Noreen Scott. I'm trying to understand what's the problem we're trying to solve. Do we think that people are dishonest, and so we're like doing this? Why can't we just have a drive-through testing like I've seen in plenty of places where somebody gives you a little swab, you swab yourself, you hand it back to them, and in my case I had the results in 48 hours, less than 48 hours. Why are we not doing that? Why are we making it so complicated? I wouldn't want to give my personal information.
I guess, to be honest, Board Member Scott, that's kind of one of our questions. And that question came up multiple times during the training today. That's the process that we followed the entire first semester. We worked very closely with the Sandoval County Department of Health, and we were we were able to, with the help of Lauren Hatch, we were able to set up a special event with the Department of Health on Wednesdays just for Rio Rancho Public Schools so that we could get our surveillance testing done weekly. And it's exactly what you just said. Our staff was able to do a drive-through. They did not have to get out of their cars. And the testing came back fairly quickly. And quite frankly, our staff became very, very used to that process. And it seemed to work quite well. We are very unsure why they've changed, other than I'm surmising that DOH was feeling a little overwhelmed, and this is a way to take something off their plate, perhaps. And I don't want to speculate. I'm just guessing a little bit there.
But going forward, Board Member Scott, the PED has informed us that effective January 2021, the only test that will be accepted for the surveillance testing will be this vault test. So we can no longer use the drive-up tests.
And there's no way to push back against that? Is there no way for the superintendents statewide or the school board association statewide to weigh in on this? It's just this is the way it is, and there's no discussion.
I'll defer that to Dr. Cleveland a little bit. Sorry, Dr. Cleveland.
I suspect there's going to be a lot of discussions about this across all school districts and all school boards in the next few days. As I said, no one knew what this was going to look like until the training this afternoon. So this was a surprise to everyone, and I doubt we are the only ones that are going to have those concerns. So it'll be interesting to see what the response is. But as Mike Chavez was saying, they have your entrance information, they have your picture, they have your ID, they have your DNA. Again, there's a lot of information there. So I don't know if Lauren Hatch wants to add anything to that, but I would want to give him an opportunity if he did. I don't know, Lauren, do you have anything you wanted to add to this?
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Cleveland, this is Lauren Hatch, the general counsel for the district. Yeah, we're just really trying to understand kind of how this works and what are the obligations and responsibilities of employees in this third-party vendor. I suspect we're going to get a lot of detail over it in the next few days, but it's difficult to implement a completely different process, especially when we've had one that's been working so well, and then really understanding the parties and what the obligations and responsibilities are there.
Here's one of the challenges, Board Member Scott, is the timeline. So we're going to be gone now. Most of our teachers will be on winter break for the next 2 weeks. And in order to open on the 19th, we will have to order those tests and have them ready to be administered on the first couple of days when we come back. And so the timeline is going to be the challenge. And if we don't meet the timeline, then the timeline to open on January the 19th won't be met. And so that's why I thought it's so important for the board to know that. Because if we order all of these tests, and we have to get everyone assigned to the tests, and we have to get everyone to agree to do that, which may be problematic, I don't know. And then those tests have to be done the very first part of the week to get them back in the latter part of the week. And then we have to do another group, another 10%, the second week. So it's the timeline that is going to be so challenging, especially if we don't get people who are willing to do the test. And if you don't get your 10%, then you can't open either. So you have to have 10%. We asked the superintendent's meeting whether we could order more tests. Mike, I think that was raised, and Peggy, in your meeting as well. We've heard two completely different answers with regards to that. So I don't know what the correct answer is, whether, if you need 180, can you order 220? in case some people don't show up or refuse to provide the information. You would have a margin of error there where you could still meet your 10%. So there's just a lot we don't know. I do think it will be a topic of conversation in a lot of school districts for the next couple of days. And so we'll keep you informed on what we hear from other districts. And but we really are concerned about whether we're going to make that 19th unless everything falls into place. And again, there's not been a lot of time for planning. So I will go on unless you have other questions for Mike or Peggy or me on the next slide.
Yeah, anyone else from the board? Go ahead, Catherine.
So I'm guessing that we're not going to incur any type of cost for this as a district for the mailing of them in or anything like that. Is that correct? The state will cover that?
That is our understanding, is that this is completely covered by PED and the company vault.
Lynn, did you have any questions?
So you said that this is going to be done orally, so not through the nasal cavity?
Correct.
Okay, and so can you speak to how accurate that is as compared to having, and I've had to have it twice, the horrible COVID test, and why now? I mean, if I'm just curious why we're changing that also.
Our understanding is that this is still a PBR test, and so it uses the same testing techniques that the nasal test uses, but that they're able to now use saliva rather than the nasal cavity cells, and that they can get the same accurate results from the saliva test. So this is not a rapid test. This is a full PBR test. That's what they told us in the training today. That question did come up. Yeah.
And what does PBR?
About that is that we have only just received the saliva test within the last week and a half. So up till that time, New Mexico did not have the test available in our state.
And what does PBR stand for?
Oh, Peggy, do you remember? And I just knew it as soon as you asked me, board member.
It's a plant.
No, and right before the meeting, I was thinking about that. Give me one moment and I will tell you.
I think it's phenobarbital serum.
What'd she say?
Phenobarbital serum is what it stands for.
Okay.
We're all trying to Google it really fast.
Right. One thing they did say, just for consideration, is that once the specimen, I guess, once you spit in a tube, essentially is what it happens. Once that is collected, it needs to be to the vault company within 5 days. So ideally, they want people to collect their sample and then bring it to a UPS drop off or bring it to the district office for pickup on the same day to ensure that it would make it there in the 5 days.
Wendy, do you have anything else? Sorry.
What others? You said Minnesota has implemented this. Is that correct?
Yes, I did a little research this afternoon on that, and I did find that the state of Minnesota is using this system. So actually, that made me feel a little better. I found that somebody else is actually using it and working with it. But I still believe we're going to have some resistance to it among some of our staff who don't want to provide that personal information.
Okay, thank you.
And I apologize, it's PCR, not PBR. PBR is professional bull riders, so it's not PBR. Sorry.
Forget that.
But PBR
That's what the teachers do in the classroom. No.
PCR stands for, and I'm not sure if I'm saying this right, polymerase chain reaction. And like I said, they did say that the saliva test, which is the type of test that is happening at Rio Rancho High School right now. That's the test they're administering at the high school, is the saliva test. That the saliva test that Vault would be administering is a PCR test. And which is identical to the nasal test.
All right. And Jeff, did you have any other questions? You're muted, Jeff. I can see the passion.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback on what Noreen was saying. That yeah, this seemed to be a very strenuous process, and Dr. Cleveland, you just mentioned, or someone just mentioned that the person has 5 days to turn it in. I mean, I would like to see if we could do it the old way, but just so I'm clear, we never agreed that this was going to be the process. If I'm not correct, Dr. Cleveland, there still has to be a final decision on this, or has a final decision been made? I know Noreen had asked that question, but I don't know if we ever got the answer or not.
Yes, sir. Our understanding is that decision was made at the state level, and that decision is deemed to be what we're going to do, and that they are not going to offer the drive-throughs anymore. So if this is the only option, I believe we have to do the testing. I just now checked back. We got our first saliva test it's a little longer ago than I thought. The first saliva test came to New Mexico on November 23rd. And so we actually did not have access to them before that. Apparently people are liking the saliva test a lot better than the nasal test. And I could certainly understand that.
Yes,
having had it done. So it's easier and people can do it themselves, which is also a positive. And it's, it can be done in the comfort of your home rather than sitting in a car for several hours. But again, the challenge appears to be with the sharing of the information. And when we were looking at it this afternoon, I guess what just jumped off the page at me was that they could sell this information or use it or give it to others. And so we're asking for clarification on that. That may or may not be the case. And so we just want more information as to what can be done with that information. I think staff would respond much more positively if they had assurances that this information could not be shared or sold.
okay.
And
All right.
go ahead, Catherine.
Is the superintendents are they going to draft any letter or any concern to the state?
I am sure that we will. As I said, nobody knew until late this afternoon, what this looked like. So I've got to call into several colleagues to see what their take is on it, and to our president this year, which is Dennis Rush, and to Stan Rounds, see what what their take is and how they feel the membership will react to that. So I really don't know. I really can't respond to that yet because I haven't heard anybody else. I haven't had a chance to talk with anybody else yet.
Okay, and I'll do the same with the New Mexico School Board Association. Obviously, we can't do anything as a school board because it's not on our agenda to do any type of letter or anything with concern, but I'll reach out to Joe and see what they're doing with the BOD. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Catherine. Jeff, I didn't mean to cut you off. If I did you have anything else?
No, that was it. I just thought maybe we could change, and if there was some input, that's all. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. I think we're good. Dr. Cleveland, if you want to continue on.
We will share information with you as we get it. And again, a lot of it's just questions we don't have answers to yet. And so it may change everyone's perspective when we get those answers. I don't know. In some cases, I don't think people are going to be very happy about doing this. So we'll see, but I will let you know what more we learn in the next day or two. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so I want to just do a very brief overview on the spring semester. We do begin virtual classes on January the 5th, of course. So we'll be ready to go virtually on that date. There will be no in-person learning. And what has changed in the past, there will also be no small group sessions until January the 19th. And that also includes athletics and as well as our special education groups. The return date obviously does also depend, apart from the testing, it also depends on the number of positive cases of COVID-19 in New Mexico, and particularly in Sandoval County. So should there be a rapid uptick in the number of cases, that could also change that start date. So it is certainly, as of right now, what we're hoping and planning to do, but it could change. And then the other, the big question I think we keep getting a lot of questions about is secondary. And we still have not received the secondary reentry toolkit. And so until we receive that, we really can't even begin to plan because we don't know what the parameters are. We've done some planning, we've done some thinking, but it's all very preliminary. We're hoping that that toolkit will come out when we return in January. So as of right now, we have no additional information about secondary reentry. Next slide, please. Okay, as I said, we really don't quite know how to move forward. We have heard the possibility, but again, that is not confirmed. The secondary would be a 1 to 10 ratio, as opposed to elementary, which is 1 to 15 ratio. So if you look at the number of classrooms we have, and if you're limited to 10, the best my math shows is that you may not even be able to get the 2 days in hybrid. You may only be able to get one, but again, we don't have the specifics. Everything we talk about is just conjecture, and until we get that toolkit, we really don't know. But our concern with 1 to 10 is there would not be a lot of students on campus at one time. That would be good in terms of exposure and spread, but certainly would limit the amount of hours for in-person learning. Next slide. This is another area we received information on late last week, and we do not have the written guidance on it as of yet, but we were told that there would be new grading guidelines for all districts, that these are non-negotiable, and it will be a grading scale of 50 to 100. And this has been the topic of considerable discussions. We certainly have looked at that and worked with that in our own district. Many other districts have already adopted this as well. We don't have much agreement on this. This is one of those things where you almost have to agree to disagree. People all, that see this very, very differently. I can tell you the rationale that we have heard from the PED and also discussed within our own district is that there are many students who are struggling at really no fault of their own. There are family situations that make it very hard for them to be in school and attend the school. That being said, there are others that have chosen not to engage and have the opportunity to do so. One of the biggest concerns is getting the students back in that are still have not returned to school yet. And the feeling from the public ed department is that if they come back to a 0, there's no way they will be able to pass even if they got most of the work done. And so they won't come back. It just, there's no way to be successful, and nobody puts themselves in a situation where you don't have any opportunity to be successful. And then the last is, that they're not going to come back, and that they do need to be in school. So we did have, as I shared with you in the superintendent's report, a huge discrepancy between the data for the public ed department and our data on the students unaccounted for. We're going through right now and cross-checking, cross-referencing everything, but we do believe our number is the accurate one. Next slide, please. We've talked about this numerous times. So We think we have 136 students that we still don't know where they have gone to, whether they have moved or they're living with family in another state, or whether they're just not going to school at all, or there are 136 kids that we believe we don't know where they are. And that's 136 too many, but out of 16,000 plus, our staff has really done a phenomenal job in tracking down students and finding out where they are. And in most cases, people have, they've either sent their children to live in another state with relatives, or they moved to a private school or whatever. So we're still looking to find those 136. We want them back in school. We want to emphasize again to parents, if you have needs that are keeping you from sending your children to school, hey, call us. We will try to help you, address those needs. We really would like to have your children back at school. And you can call the front desk and ask for student services, and they can help you with those support services. And we're working with county support services. We're working with Engage New Mexico. We're working with Graduate New Mexico. We have several different approaches to trying to find our students and get them back. Next slide. There'll be a commendation this evening, recognizing the hard work that's been done by our counselors and social workers. And as you know, everyone's had a pretty heavy load, but they certainly have had increased load since last March, and we do appreciate them. And Lynn Coleman will be presenting the commendation this evening on behalf of the board. Next slide, please. We're delighted to have the foundation with us this evening. We're always glad to have them come and to hear from them. I just want to thank them again for their hard work over the years on behalf of the district, its staff, and our students, and all of the things that they have done to help our district. This has been a tough couple of years, and they have stepped forward in several different ways. But tonight, they're here to talk to you about the Kids Formula for Excellence Scholarship. And it is in honor of our former principal, Linda Kitts, who passed away in a very untimely manner last year. And it's wonderful to see her honored. She was an outstanding mathematics teacher. And I look forward to hearing more information about that. We have, I believe, Nicole Smith, Bill Stanich, Luana Coleman, Nikki Early, and Pat Devasto, who will be here to address that in just a couple of minutes. Next slide. Another presentation, a very important one this evening, is about remote instructional engagement and strategic action steps. You recall we did the survey. We got a lot of information, a lot of feedback. I think what was the consistent message that we heard over and over again was that we needed to make some changes and modifications in the spring semester. And while there are differences of opinion, I would really want to share that the majority of responses indicated that change was needed and that the status quo really wasn't meeting the needs of our students and families to the degree that we hoped that they would. The CNI presentation is a response to those feedback and concern that we received. And they include information about the stakeholder survey. Another very important part is in looking at the middle school and high school failure rates, which are higher than we would like to have them. Attendancy and truancy data, and also input from instructional leaders, administrators, and CNI staff as well. Some of the feedback that we received, I think one of the most consistent messages that we received was a desire by our particularly parents, but also students, that we have a more structured daily schedule for students, as well as more interaction with teachers, whether it was in whole group instruction or whether it was in the Google Meets. And our staff really responded to that. I think they've already responded to some of those concerns in trying to better meet our student needs. The second is that we're really still hoping that we're going to get our secondary students back to in-person learning in the spring. And so we need a structure and a schedule that will allow us to slide into in-person learning as early as possible in the spring when allowed by PED. And I think you got a chance to see really how well that could be done with our elementary program. They have been able to move in and back out pretty seamlessly. So that's what we're looking to do, is to have something that if we are given permission to bring our students back, our secondary students back, we can do that very quickly. And the schedule will be structured so that that can be done. And again, want to thank everyone. It's going to take our teachers, parents, students, everybody committed to improving student learning outcomes for the second semester. Everyone has a part to play in this, and everybody has to do their part, or it's really not going to be very successful. And the presenters are Carl Lepelman, Luana Coleman, and Renee Salcedo. Another really important agenda item this evening is the Alternative Demonstration of Competency, ADC. And the Public Ed Department asked all the districts to consider expanding ADC possibilities for 1 year only. And what that means is that you provide different ways for students to demonstrate that they have achieved the graduation content requirement in different ways. So it's not totally dependent on the test. It may be shown in some other ways. Other districts have had some of those in the past. And they're going to share with you some of the proposals. We anticipate this to be a 1 year only change, or at least just temporarily for 1 year, and it can be reassessed. But it only applies to those students who are current seniors and are on track to graduate this spring or this summer. I really want to emphasize this. It is important. We're trying to be as flexible as we can be and help students every way we can. But on the other hand, we're not giving away the diploma without some work. I mean, if you do have to accomplish the goals. That's what the state has set. So our intent is to find a way to help them demonstrate that they know that content, that they're able to, so that they are able to graduate. We really want every one of our students to graduate this year. And that flexibility is something that, as I said, the Public Ed Department has asked every district to look at. And so you will be asked to consider an approval of this temporary modification. And that presentation will be by Dr. Happy Miller, Luana Coleman, and Renee Salcedo. We have a short presentation. Melanie Archibald will present capital outlay requests for the upcoming meeting with the delegation. That's this Wednesday evening. So give you a chance to see those. We've been told there's not going to be a lot of resources, not going to be a lot of money, to be very circumspect in what we ask for this year. And because they don't think they're going to see a lot of funding. The real focus right now is protecting operational funding and keeping schools at the level of funding that they have this year. And so capital is not the top priority. There may be some funding for it, but it's not going to be like it has been in better years. And certainly we have been encouraged to link anything that we do to COVID-19 safety or general safety as it's related to general safety or the pandemic. It does not have to be the pandemic, but we were encouraged to look to those areas. Are there any other questions or comments before I turn it back to President Galbraith?
Board, is there any questions?
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Cleveland. We appreciate it. When did you actually have something? I didn't know if you were moving to.
I was just curious if Dr. Cleveland could speak to what she might be hearing at this point in regard to a vaccine for district staff and employees.
We've had a lot of discussion, but we haven't had anything definitive at all. What we have heard is that the original plan was school district staff would be in the second cycle. First responders and hospital staff would be number one, and they would get the vaccine before anyone else, as would adults in nursing homes, people who are really vulnerable. And then the second time vaccinations were provided, we would be there. There has been the superintendent in Farmington, Eugene Schmidt, did send a letter to the governor and to the secretary asking to move school personnel into the category of essential worker, which would allow them to be part of the first wave. And so I don't know whether there'll be a response to his request. It was a very well-written request, and he says if we really want to get these kids back in school, that's one of the priorities. And I really, I very much agree with a lot of his rationale. I did ask Lauren Hatch to explain to me what essential worker really means and what is the requirements for essential workers and are there responsibilities attached to it. He said it really varies state by state, and it's how it's defined in that state. But essential workers, of course, are required to be on the job, and they are part of the first wave of vaccinations. The other thing that we have heard, Board Member Coleman, is that schools may play a role in the whole vaccination process. They did years ago with the Salk vaccine for polio, and whether we would be asked to, like with surveillance testing, be part of the rollout of that. But we have not heard anything at all about whether we would be asked to do that. But some of us that are older remember when we were taking the polio vaccine, they gave us these little sugar cubes, and we stood in line and took our little sugar cube, and that the schools were the delivery system for the polio vaccine. So I don't know. There's been some discussion of that, but I have not seen anything in writing, anything definitive. But that's all I know right now.
And to piggyback on that, I just also am wondering too, kind of, I would assume that there are discussions going on about how the district will handle things if staff does not want to take the vaccine. And that may be something down the road that will be talked about, but I can imagine that there are people that are uncomfortable taking it out of concern, as we've all heard, and just wondering how the district is preparing, not an answer, but preparing if that's the case.
I think that it'll come from the state, Board Member Coleman. It won't come from us. And probably the state will give us direction on that. I do know there's been some discussion about that, and there have been different examples in our history. For example, many years ago, certainly when I first started teaching, you had to be free of tuberculosis, or you could not teach. You did your chest X-ray or your skin prick, and if you weren't willing to do that, you did not teach in the state of New Mexico. So I don't know if they'll go that route. The other route would be, those folks who cannot take it or will not take it. Then there's a difference between the two. Will we continue on some virtual learning, and would they be able to continue on in that capacity as a virtual educators? They would not come into the building, would not endanger other staff or students. But we don't know what that virtual learning is going to look like the next year or two. It will change a lot, obviously. So there's a lot of unknowns, but I suspect you're right. I think there may be some people who will not want to take it, but the state has the final say over whether they will allow you in the classroom or not.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Cleveland, and thank you, Board Member Coleman, for asking those questions. I was actually thinking about those earlier today. Personally, I was wanting to have a party when I heard the announcement that the trucks were rolling out with vaccines this morning. So that is good news. So thank you. Okay, moving on to item E, to approve the prioritized agenda and proposed time allocations. Is there any discussion needed on that?
I make a motion to approve the agenda. This is Board Member Catherine Cullen.
This is Board Member Jeff Morgan. I second. Thank you.
Thank you. Jen, can you take a roll call vote for us? Jane, you're not coming through real clear.
How about now?
There we go.
I have to kind of sit on the microphone, sorry.
That's okay.
Vice President Morgan,
Yes.
Secretary Scott,
Yes.
Board Member Cullen.
Yes.
Board Member Coleman,
Yes.
President Galbraith.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion carries. So now for our public comment, we received 7 public comments. 3 of those came from, I'm just going to announce the names and kind of the subject with it. 3 of those came from Virginia Damron regarding the current online learning that's happening in the schools. We received an anonymous public message on special needs in our teachers. We received one from a student at Cleveland High School about the current workload for high school students. And we received one from Nicole Jess asking for a different platform than Edgenuity. And one from Shaylin Livo and asking for more specials at the elementary level. For those who are wishing to give public comment, please go to our Rio Rancho board page and by going to rrps.net, and you will see a form that you can fill out to give public comment to the board. And we do read all of those public comments, and we appreciate receiving them. Okay, moving down to our commendations. Wynn Coleman will be presenting a commendation on behalf of the board.
Yes, here, 1 second, please.
Okay.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. It's my pleasure this evening to speak about the counselors of our district. My passion for the social and emotional well-being of our students in our district has gifted me with the opportunity to interact with a number of district counselors and social workers. And I thought tonight it would be good to highlight just very few things that they do. And I do want to just acknowledge that this starts at the top, from Dr. Cleveland on down through Jerry Reeder, Tana Burgos. Their commitment, their caring, and their passion for our students is evident all the way through. I know that the district is implementing and working at implementing so many wonderful things, from Handle with Care. That's a collaborative effort with key stakeholders that really works to minimize a child's exposure to trauma and violence. I think it's important that people know that 2/3 of our school social workers are licensed social workers and trained and registered to provide clinical supervision in and outside of Rio Rancho Public Schools. We have a number of counselors and social workers that have participated in our district's Behavioral Health Advisory Committee. And last but not least, I think it's really important and a great thing to celebrate that we're one of the first districts in the nation to implement teen mental health first aid district-wide for sophomores. And a group of counselors, social workers, and administration recently became some of the first teen mental health first aid instructors in the state of New Mexico. I can't speak enough about how wonderful how wonderful I think the staff is, and their commitment. I know that it's a challenge in the most typical of circumstances, and I know one of the things that I have heard repeatedly is that our counselors and social workers miss the interaction, the face-to-face interaction with our students. And I just want to say just a special thank you for everything that you do for our district, for our families, and for our students. Just a special thank you.
Thank you so much, Board Member Coleman. That is so appreciated. And I just wanted to give the board, I think Wynn did a wonderful job, but is there anything else that the board wanted to add to her commendation tonight? Jeff, you're unmuted, I see.
I just want to say thanks for the work that she does, and and the people that she worked with. So thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Noreen?
Yes, I would like to echo the thanks to our staff, and I would also like to say that there was a presentation at the State Association, School Board Association, and they recognized Rio Rancho as being a leader in this area. So it's very gratifying to know the hard work that is being done in our district is recognized statewide.
Thank you. Board Member Cullen, did you want to add anything?
Trying to unmute, sorry. It's going to be the quote of the year, right? So yeah, thank you so much for presenting that win. She covered everything. And so thank you so much, everybody, for all that you guys do for our students. I know that it's a very difficult time for a lot of our students, so we really appreciate them and all the work they do.
Very, very much. Thank you. And Dr. Cleveland, did you want to add anything?
I have the same challenge of getting it up and being able to turn on my I think it's really all been said, but they have had, I don't think people know how much of an increase in their workload they have had as a result of the pandemic. And yet, despite that workload, they have continued to work hard, reach out to students and families and offer that help. And they have literally, I had one parent tell me that counselor at Cleveland had been a lifeline, literally a lifeline for their child. So to all of the counselors, all levels, our social workers, this has been one of the most challenging times I know you've ever dealt with, but thank you for continuing to work so hard for our students and families.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Cleveland. And thank you again, Board Member Coleman, for bringing this commendation tonight. It's very important to highlight these individuals. Okay. We will now move on to our reports section, and we have a good number of people who are going to present our first one. It's going to be on the Rio Rancho Education Foundation, RREF, Kids Formula for Excellence Scholarship. So we have Luana Coleman, our Executive Director of Secondary Curriculum and Instruction. We have Pat DeVosto for Rio Rancho High School, our Assistant Principal there. Nikki Erdely, our secondary math curriculum instruction, Bill Stanage from RREF, he's the president, and Nicole Smith, also RREF board member. So I will give it off to Luana. I'm hoping that she's going to start us off. Okay.
Good evening, Madam President Galbraith, members of the board, and Dr. Cleveland. We are humbled and grateful to stand before you this evening to share with you this amazing collaboration between the Rio Rancho Education Foundation and Rio Rancho Public Schools to honor our friend and colleague Linda Kitts with the Formula for Excellence. And at the expense of being just really overt, Linda was a math teacher, and hence the title of this formula. We also believe that what we have put together with the Rio Rancho Education Foundation does provide an opportunity of excellence for our teachers and our upcoming teachers. And so without further ado, I'll turn it over to Pat for the first slide.
Thank you, Luana. President Galbraith, Dr. Cleveland, and members of the board, first of all, Linda Kitts was not only a wonderful friend, but also an excellent educator. And her story is interesting. Back in 1999, I was assistant principal at Lincoln Middle School. Mr. Van Aken was the principal, and we needed a math teacher. And at the time, my daughter, Nikki, was in 7th grade at Eagle Ridge Middle School and heard me say that we were looking for a math teacher, and they're hard to find. And Nikki said, Mom, we have the sub right now at Eagle Ridge. Look at her. We have a sub right now at Eagle Ridge, and her name is Mrs. Kitts, and she's teaching math, and I really like her. Why don't you hire her? So based on that recommendation, we did. And Linda was actually in banking before she became a teacher. So she went from being a mathematics teacher to being the assistant principal at Lincoln Middle School, and on to being the principal she was at Lincoln Middle School, then became principal at Rio Rancho Middle School. She's truly missed, but so all of us on the board got together and talked about how can we keep her honor and do something that would make her so happy. So, Luana?
Thank you. Next slide. In thinking about how to honor Linda, honor her profession as a math teacher, honor our teachers, and do something that was really special for Rio Rancho Public Schools that no one else really had, we got to brainstorm with the Education Foundation and came up with a couple of kind of overarching ideas for this program. And one of the things we wanted to make sure that we did was that we were honoring levels of teachers. So many times you see that it's focused on just teachers in general, or there's one niche of teachers that are focused on, but this we want to make sure that pre-service and EAs who may want to become teachers have an opportunity, new teachers have an opportunity, novice teachers, and speaking of novice teachers, there are 3 of our finest in this picture, 3 math teachers that are all friends and all relatively new to the profession. And these folks come to our mind when we think, who do we want to support and maintain their expertise, grow their expertise, and make sure they stay in the district. And then finally, veteran teachers. So we want to make sure that we've reached the spectrum of math teachers for Rio Rancho Public Schools. Next slide. And in doing that, we recognize that there are 3 areas of support that are really integral to success and excellence in teaching. And one is professional learning, one is education, furthering education and certification, and then finally, especially this year, technology and resources. So I'll turn it over to Nikki, who will give a little more details on each of these 3 pockets.
Thank you, Luana. Next slide. So just like Luana said, we had those 3 branches that we really want to focus on. So the professional learning piece, you'll see a picture here of a group of our middle school teachers that were able to go to, this was a while back, to a live conference. And they talked about how invigorating it was for them and for their learning and exactly what they needed at that point in time. So we would like to be able to offer teachers that opportunity to apply for funds to be able to go to these kind of conferences for different trainings, and also for book studies. In the past couple of years, I've been able to pull in secondary math teachers to be able to participate in book studies, and usually have been limited by the amount of funding that we have and the number of teachers that we can get in to those kinds of learning. The next area, next slide, please, is about education and certification. So here you see a picture of math teacher Erica Lyons, who actually is teaching at Rio Rancho Middle School, who is a level 2 licensed teacher who could stay at level 2 if she wanted to, but we would love for her to continue her learning and go on to a level 3, which of course requires some money to be able to do that. So we would like to be able to entice our math teachers to go as far as they possibly can, whether it's with advanced degrees, licensure, or going after a national board teaching certification. Next slide. And then we would also like to be able to support the teachers with technology and resources. You have Shawnee Legier, who is a high school math teacher at Cleveland High School, and she is using a tablet, if you can see her writing on that, that she found, which enables her to be able to write on a screen very easily to help teach her students during live Google Meets. That's something that she purchased out of her own pocket. So it's things like this that could really help teachers with the learning in the classroom that we would be able to fund. So different things about devices or subscriptions, because there's a lot of things that are free, but also a lot of different applications that we call freemium, where you can get so much for free, but then you have to pay extra to be able to get a whole subscription. So these are the things that we would like to be able to provide our teachers if they so choose to apply for this Linda Kitts formula for excellence. Next slide. And I'll send that back to you, Luana.
So the next steps will be to put together a committee that will then help us design the application. And we really see as there are three areas, then there are three kinds of applications. So a math teacher might want to continue their education or their level 3 or their national boards, and that would be an application. Another teacher might want some new technology, that would be an application, and then also for professional learning. And we will create a timeline and action plan, develop the application process with a rubric to go along with it, and then work with the communications department to spread the word about this. And again, I cannot commend the collaborative effort that Pat brought to the table and the Rio Rancho Education Foundation. And I'd like now to give Bill Stanage, the president, and or Nicole Smith from the Rio Rancho Education Foundation, an opportunity to speak to this.
Well, I'd like to, well, thank you for saying the nice things about our foundation. We're here for you to serve you. But I'd like to hear Nicole Smith talk because you hear me talk every so often. So Nicole, it's all yours.
Sure. Thank you, Bill. Well, first and foremost, I'd just like to thank everybody for the opportunity to join you tonight. As Bill mentioned, my name is Nicole Smith. I am a member on the board of the Rio Rancho Education Foundation. I'm also a graduate of Rio Rancho Public Schools and a former student of both Lincoln Middle School and Rio Rancho Middle School. So it's really a great opportunity to be able to be here tonight and discuss the KITS formula for excellence. I think kind of in developing this program and in collaborating to look for ways and identify ways to really impact and support the development and professional development and education of teachers within the district. It's something that the Education Foundation has been looking to do for a number of years, and I think we're all just so thrilled to be able to do so in a way that would honor the legacy of Linda Kitts and honor the impact that she had on students, district, and just her broad impact. So again, thank you for allowing us to be here with you tonight. We really appreciate the opportunity, and we're excited to see this hopefully move forward.
Thank you, Nicole and Bill. And finally, we've invited Linda's husband and daughter, Stan and Stephanie, if they would like to say a couple of words.
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Cleveland, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to address the board. Stephanie and I are so grateful for the outpouring of support that we have received from so many people. Linda was a proud member of Rio Rancho Public Schools and would be so honored for the recognition that you all have given her tonight. We are so thankful for her memory. Will be remembered for years to come. Linda would always say something funny to try to make people laugh. But I know this would be one of those moments where she would be speechless. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for this opportunity and for this just amazing honor to our friend Linda. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that report, and what a beautiful way to remember someone who is so loved in our district. And so we appreciate all that. We appreciate our REF coming together with us to help us to put this together, and we really appreciate that. Bill, I wanted I saw you were muted, or you unmuted for a second. Is there anything else that you wanted to add before we move on from this report? You're still muted.
I know technology. Ask my 15-year-old daughter. I just want to add too is that this is a $20,000 commitment for this year, and we are going to try to make this happen on a yearly basis, ongoing, because we feel that this type of program needs to have some legs to it. And I think if we can make it work in perpetuity and help keep our district on top, so that's what we're committed to do.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Dr. Cleveland, did you want to add anything?
No, just thank you for being here, and thank you for having an opportunity to honor someone that made such a difference in our district for such a long period of time. And I do believe she would be really, really pleased. And I say we'll do our fair share in promoting and supporting this effort. But again, to the foundation, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, okay. We appreciate that. And thank you all for being here on our meeting who came in, especially Linda's family. Okay, we will now move on to board. Is there anything that you wanted to say? I didn't want to cut you off. Okay. Okay. We're going to move on to our next report, which is on remote instructional engagement and strategic actions. Carl Leppelman will be our presenter along with Luana Coleman. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the board, Dr. Cleveland. This evening, we're taking some major steps forward, we believe, to benefit our students as we go into the second semester. We've learned a lot. We've learned a lot about Edgenuity. We learned a lot about online learning. And as we surveyed students, we found out the biggest challenge they had this year was, guess what? Adjusting to online learning. And that means everyone. So Jane, would you please move to the first slide? Thank you. Well, we have some problems. We actually had a lot of good things happening. When we looked at the analysis of the TNTP survey, it was really clear that, and as you recollect as a board, you looked at the data, and one of the data points I think is very important is that 85% of the students believe their teachers were doing the best to help them learn. And I think that's a major statement. And as you talk with students also, almost 80% of them said, my teacher makes me feel like I belong in the class. That means a lot. When teachers say, I want you here, I need you here, that's important. Well, we found out we had some problems with getting them there. And sometimes that engagement was very difficult. So we also found out from the survey that students said, I learn most when my teachers teach lessons online. So direct instruction with that consistency of that, which makes sense. So if I have a question right then I can come back and get some help the next day or the following day. So we looked at that survey very in depth, and I want to thank the entire team, Beata Thorntonson, Happy, LJ, Joy, at every level, Jana, Renee. We really dug into that to look at making some strategic decisions. We also looked at the middle school failure and high school failure rates. There's some good news and bad news. The bad news was when we first looked at them at Q1 at the high school, they were around 25 to 27%. Since then, they've dropped in around the 17% range, which is still too high. That's more than double what we would normally have in a failure rate. At middle school, it wasn't quite so good. When we first looked at it, we were pushing 40% failure going into quarter one. We're now looking at about a little over 30% failure rate, but of course we haven't finished finals. There's still time, and you know how some students will pull it out at the very end. I think we're going to see that lower, hopefully into about the 25% range, but that's still 3 times as high as what we see at middle school when they're face-to-face with us. So I think those failure rates tell us a lot. The attendance also tells us a lot. We looked at attendance and truancy data. It is not good. We have concerns about students being in attendance, and the truancy letters have gone out, typically. But I want to say one thing about that. The principals, the teachers, the counselors work very hard with families and with students, because we know that in some cases a student doesn't have a parent at home. And so we want to make sure that if there are extenuating circumstances, we work with them. So they've called out, reached out, and really worked hard to try to engage families and help families out. We also use data from the instructional leaders at the high school, the content leaders at the middle school, the administrators and curriculum instructional staff, such as the coordinators, and Nikki's one of them. You saw her tonight. And we also looked at what, in particularly middle school, working closely with the Cyber Academy teachers, what could we do differently? And with Heidi Kenworthy, who is actually managing that initiative, what can we do differently to meet the needs of students? Next slide. So what did we come up with? And you've seen this board. Some of you may have attended an AB schedule at some point in time. I will go through that a little bit more in the next slide, so I'm not going to cover that in detail, but basically I think that schedule will have a lot of benefits for our students. Now, some students, it may not have as much benefit, and some students may not feel it's actually raising the expectation. But I think in general, students will respond to high expectations, and I think that will help. We're going to look at the second semester curriculum at middle school, and specifically compacting really means customizing the Edgenuity program. And what we want to do there is take out things we see now that do not add value in terms of standards, and put in actual direct instructional content, such as writing, labs and labs in different science classes that teachers will actually teach during those scheduled periods in the AB schedule. And we believe that will further engage students and sort of help focus us on the curriculum. That means we will sort of condense some of the, we think, busy work that's in the curriculum, and teachers are working closely with their coordinators at CNI, the Cyber Academy staff, as well as the PLCs to get that done for second semester right now. We also felt and think that, and saw in the survey, that some students really have a hard time during the day because sometimes they're watching their younger siblings. And so we believe that evening and weekend academic support and tutorial sessions is absolutely critical right now. We see there's a need for that, and we're getting a lot of response from the teachers and interest in doing that and trying to help the students be successful. I'd like to actually recognize Nikki again and Patty Warmington up at the Cyber Academy. They came up with a brilliant idea, I think, and that is to actually get ahead of failure in 9th grade algebra. So what we've done is create a separate course in Edgenuity that's second semester, and that is like an eighth grade intensified math class, and it'll be double blocked for students who have not been successful that first semester, and we're going to provide additional support within that class. So I think that's really good. Eagle Ridge actually had begun that process, and we were seeing good results with that. I won't go into detail around changes to attendance taking, but I think that's going to be very critical, because you heard from parents that we've had some problems with taking attendance. So we want to make sure that we're going to cover that attendance piece in a, actually LJ will later in the parent-teacher student compact. Next slide. We believe, and I think Dr. Cleveland, you alluded to that earlier, is that it's going to be easy to follow. What consistent instructions and structure routines would students and teachers face in AB schedule? It's very clear, and attendance will be taken only during those periods where they attend an AB schedule in the mornings. And I'll show you the schedule after this slide. It provides more direct instruction, face-to-face virtual time with students for that meaningful instructional support. A little later start for Google Meets with break in between the meets. The afternoon is a good consistent time for additional support from teachers. It would be consistent across all middle schools. For example, right now we have 2 middle schools that are, well, actually we have of the 4 middle schools, there are 2 different schedules. This will bring them together. It's sort of a balance between what we currently have between the 2 different schedules. And I think Dr. Cleveland is correct in saying that it would help us prepare for that hybrid transition. Very, very important, because students actually will get into a routine have that purpose. And then when we slide into direct instruction in the schools, and we want our kids in school, and we know that that's absolutely critical, and hopefully everything will work out second semester where we can get middle school students in the classrooms. I think the last bullet really is much like talk about the balance between direct instruction and time in the afternoons. I think that's been something we've needed with Edgenuity. So kids will need time in the program as well as time with direct support from the teachers. And it will clarify our attendance requirements. I think there's been a lot of lack of clarity with that. And I think this will be helpful with that, with this AB schedule. One thing good is Google offers now an extension to take attendance very easily. In the past, it was very difficult. The first 2 months of school, we were going, oh my goodness, how do teachers do this? And attendance clerks, it was really a challenge. So I think we have a really good method to do that. Next slide, please, Jane. Okay, this is the schedule. It's a little fuzzy, or my glasses aren't exactly correct, but you can see the mornings are pretty packed, pretty clearly periods of instruction. Students come in, we will have, as I said, there'll be Google Meets there. Another tool that the teachers are using are breakout rooms for students who may be ahead, on grade level, or behind, and they can work during that period, rotating within those groups. So I think those flexible groups during those periods are going to be critical. Teachers are actually going to be able to look at compacting again and look at what lessons, where are kids struggling, and what can I do to focus on that? What are the common misunderstandings? I can teach to that with some of the curriculum knowledge I have as a group, and then I can break them out into their different Google classrooms. So in the afternoon, they would then work on the platform. Hopefully what they received in the morning, they would be have a better understanding, but they would still have additional support with Open Google Meet that afternoon and reading and tutorial groups as needed. And then Wednesdays would be that work on the individual classrooms through Edgenuity, homework, reading, group assignments, projects. If assignment in the WAG, week at a glance is there, a teacher could touch base with students on Wednesday and provide support. And the next slide, please. Okay, I'd like to turn this over to LJ. She's going to talk a little bit about the work she did with instructional leaders and getting to that AB schedule, and then move to the instructional compact.
Thank you, Carl. Good evening again, Madam President Galbraith, members of the board, and Dr. Cleveland. The schedule for high school is very similar to the middle school. And this was when we started talking about an alternative, more focused and more structured schedule for second semester. Several of the leaders from the schools sent us samples from Los Alamos and from Cibola. And so the schedule that we're adopting is the schedule that both of those schools have been using this first semester. The curriculum modifications for spring are based on our learnings from this fall and focused work with the ELA, social studies, science, and math teachers in making sure that they have identified the priority standards, they have outlined the curriculum that they want to teach, and making sure that giving enough time for students to work on the assignments and enough time for them to do the instruction. So we've learned a lot this first semester. I think I said that at the beginning of the semester, that we learned a lot in the spring. We just keep learning, so that's good. And to follow one of our favorite motto lines from Maya Angelou, when you know better, you do better. So that's what we're trying to do. And then finally, the evening and weekend academic support, we're going to open opportunities for students to have a tutoring schedule that would give them an opportunity in the evening and on the weekends to check in with the teacher, to ask questions, to get just-in-time support. One of the things we learned from the TNTP survey was that students were missing that immediate feedback that they get in the classroom when they can raise their hand and a teacher can answer their question immediately. We don't have that remotely, so how can we move closer to having opportunities for students to engage with their teachers or with a teacher in their subject more frequently throughout the day and the week? Next slide. very similar to middle school. The structure really is something that we heard from students, parents, and teachers that was missing. And so this schedule will be very easy to follow. Parents will know that when their student should be in a Google Meet every single day. That's a very simple schedule in the morning. Students will be in Google Meets, period. It provides greater opportunities for more face-to-face interaction with teachers and for more meaningful instruction. So with the Monday, Wednesday classes, a teacher would be very likely to introduce a concept, introduce something that might be difficult for students to understand on their own, do some direct face-to-face teaching, then make some assignments that students would go do asynchronously offline, and then Wednesday come back and get feedback and follow up and continue that cycle. And we also heard from students and from teachers that really starting high school at 7:20 virtually, really, we thought that was a good idea at the time because we wanted to mimic the high school schedule. We were sure we would be in a hybrid setting. We didn't want to get things too off kilter, but now we realize that there's no bus schedule, and so we don't have to start school at 7:20. And so given the rhythms of teenagers, making school start a little bit later seemed to be a really good response to the virtual world that we're in. And I think we were all learning too that what we're doing is not like school was. And so as we learn to make that shift and make some changes to accommodate the learning that's taking place in ways that better serve students and families. Also, the schedule has that consistent time for help every afternoon. And again, that's very clear. It's the same schedule every day. What's happening in the afternoon is where students would go for individual help, for tutoring. They would have time that is allocated specifically for working on their asynchronous classes in the afternoons. And as Carl and Dr. Cleveland both said, we think it will transition well to the hybrid model if we get to do that. And then clear attendance requirements that, as Carl mentioned, and I'll speak to those in the next slide, I think. Here's the schedule for high school. The only real difference is that the asynchronous day is on Friday. So Monday, Wednesday are the same classes meet. Tuesday, Thursday, the same classes meet. The afternoons are given to individual student support, completing their asynchronous work. And we again think that this structure will provide an opportunity for students to be more successful in following the schedule and supporting their work. Next slide. The Learning Compact we did at the beginning of the year. So we sent out to all of our families and to all teachers and all students this compact that iterates this idea that we have all have a role to play in helping students be successful. So it's the student, it's the teacher, and the parent. Now that seems like a no-brainer, that it's always been that way, but it's even more important in this environment to understand our roles, each of the roles, as we try to commit to helping students be successful. So we've changed the compact up a little bit. Next slide. And there are a lot of words, but I want to point out the circled section is the biggest change, and that's the attendance taking. So with the new schedule, attendance will be taken during live meets. Attendance is required to be taken during live meets. Students are required to attend. It is that we do not want to send any message home that there is an optional attendance to Google Meets. And when a student is expected to be on time and is expected to stay until dismissed by the teacher. So the students are not coming and going willy-nilly to these Google Meets. Those Google Meets are class time that students are expected to be in. And parents can know with our really structured schedule when their child should be in Google Meets and can support their children and their teachers in making sure they're attending. And so to be counted in attendance, the student needs to show up on time and must stay the entire Google Meet and must participate. And participate can look like several different things. Maybe it's adding to the chat. Maybe it's answering questions by coming off mute. Maybe it's participating in some online activity that the teacher has. Maybe it's showing up at the breakout room and participating in the small group. There needs to be some evidence of the student participating in the Google Meet. So we've had challenges of dealing with students who will sign on, but then don't turn their camera on and never say anything. So teachers are going to work really hard to set these expectations up front the first day we come back in January. And so that's the big change that we wanted to share with you, is around the attendance taking and participation in the Google Meet. The teachers will continue to use the week at a glance, which Carl mentioned earlier, the WAG, and that sets forth everything a student needs to do during that week. So their parents can have a look at that and help support their children. Students should be looking at that every day to see what is on the week at a glance for that day. And that is intended to keep everybody on track and with a full disclosure of what's expected of students that day. And so we added a couple of pieces about the Google Meets. Participating and showing up to the Google Meets is a student expectation, and it is a parent expectation in supporting us to encourage and get students into the Meets. And other than that, I think most of those were similar to what we saw in the fall semester, but we want to make sure that families see this. I know that at least one middle school has turned it into a Google form and is going to ask families and students to sign it. And so families should be seeing this come out if they haven't already seen it. And I think that's it. Next slide.
I think there is a question slide I thought I put in there.
Oh, you did.
There
Yes.
it is, questions.
All right. I'm like, we
So
can't.
Carl's going to take questions.
Well, before we get to questions, I do want to reiterate, school did start obviously in August, but I think this is an adjustment for our particular, our high school and middle school, but high school students. And I do think that it's a partnership. I think everything we do, whether they're in school, I've always believed in this. And so as a district, that we are partners. And I want to reach out to students and say, engage if you can. I know that there are barriers to engagement, but it's critical because it's your future. It is absolutely your future. If you were behind last semester and we had 2 months of of loss of instruction, and you sometimes feel like you're behind, there's no hope. Now, I'm not talking to those kids way ahead. I know I wasn't one of those, but we want to be here to help you and support you. But turn on the Google Meet, join us, and join your teacher. I think it's critical. And in this case, in the mornings, it's actually not optional. So, and as I mentioned, that 8th grade class that I talked about for those 9th graders, because algebra is a gatekeeper to your future. And basically, when you get to algebra, it's either opens the door for a lot of things or doesn't. And that 8th grade class is a required class. So you may be in an 8th grade, you may be an 8th grader right now, and you may be way behind, but we have something to help you. But it will be a class that you need to be in. So we're creating solutions to try to meet the needs of the students and parents. And I think number one, the parents had asked for more direct instruction, and hopefully this will be a good thing. So any questions, we're ready to entertain those.
Thank you so much. I did actually fill out that compact already, I think, with Eagle Ridge. So yeah, it is rolling out. All right, we'll go over to the board. We'll start with Catherine Collin. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. So I just wanted to check. So you were saying that the middle school right now, we're at about a 30% failure rate, and we're hoping to get 25%?
I may have, yeah. Well, it doesn't sound good when you say you hope to get a quarter of your kids from to fail, but
I know.
it sounds really bad.
This is
I
scary.
guess what's that phrase? That things can be worse. No, they're not. They are bad. We need to reduce that number of kids who are failing because middle school is absolutely essential to what happens in high school. We're about 32% going into the about 9 weeks. That's about where we're at. Actually went up a little bit, but what I'm hoping for is teachers worked really hard to do free movement, to allow kids to do some pre-testing, to do some additional supports that we get, and that sounds terrible, that we get down to 25% failure for the first semester. Once we've done finals, we had elective finals last week. We're having cores this week. Typically, students will tend to pull it out a little bit in ingenuity and do a little better towards the end, and that's what I'm hoping. But yes, we are not where we want to be. We're a third of our students are failing. If the definition is 59 or below and not on track to complete that course.
Yeah, and this kind of aligns with a lot of the letters that we've been receiving from parents as well with the concerns. And this is with the ingenuity with the middle school with their new schedule. Is there enough time for them to really be able to do that ingenuity coursework in the afternoon? I was trying to look at the calendar, the new schedule, because that was another concern with, I mean, I know that they need face-to-face time. That has been the big thing that we've been hearing back from parents. They need the instructional time. But with this schedule, will this give them enough time in the afternoon to be doing their ingenuity coursework and keep up with that? Because that was also a concern with the middle school, because they were put into ingenuity for middle school, and some of them are really struggling at keeping that up. Now, I have experience with ingenuity, have experience with the student who does everything towards the end and then catches up. But that's where the concerning part here is being on the Google Meets during the day, which I think they really need, but then also catching up on the ingenuity in the afternoon. So kind of wanted to see what John thought
That's
on
an
that.
excellent question, Mrs. Cullen. I do think it's important. It's about that compacting. So I'm going to turn that to LJ a little bit in terms of the work coordinators are currently doing with the content leaders at the middle schools to actually take out things and put things in to make that time work by the backward planning. Go ahead, LJ. Yeah.
Thank you, Carl. Board Member Cullen. The work that the teachers and the coordinators have been doing around the compacting of the curriculum started with, as Carl said, the backward planning. So they looked at the full semester, the full second semester, looked at how many hours was attached to that semester, and then began to look at where the gaps were and where there could be places that they could remove lessons, remove activities that wouldn't get in the way of the overall outcome for students at the testing period. And so what they began to then compact it down, saying, all right, now we have this many hours in the semester, and we want to ensure that we've got this many hours of direct instruction. So what can we reasonably ask students to do and still maintain the autonomy of the whole course? And I think they all feel much better about where they are where they were able to do that this semester to support students being successful, having enough time to do the ingenuity, plus getting the support in live Google Meets. And then in some cases, as Carl mentioned earlier, the English teachers added some writing assignments. So they took some things out to be able to add in a writing assignment, or the science teachers took some things out to be able to add a lab. So it just took, as I said earlier, that first semester of becoming a lot smarter about ingenuity, about how our students were doing on it, about how much time it was taking an average student to complete and stay ahead. And so I think with these changes to the curriculum, that we're giving everybody a chance to be more successful. And then the other thing is, I think they're all starting with the semester with the idea of trying to keep together on pace, so that then when you have a live lesson, that it can hit all of the students rather than just trying to aim somewhere in the middle where you think some students might be. So trying to keep students together as far as along, and that will help bring the students who might be struggling along and really understanding much deeper how Edgenuity works so that they can support students. So I think we've learned a lot of good lessons the first semester.
So when you're saying remove activities, you're talking about removing some activities out of the Edgenuity program. So you're able to do that, manipulate or remove things from the Edgenuity so that you can kind of do it in the classroom instead?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Member Cullen, definitely. It's better to do it before you start. Patty Vormta did it with mathematics early on. Actually, we just did it for the 8th grade class. You can do that, but I do believe that by doing this, they could take out a writing. For example, there's maybe a writing assignment there might be a lot of, and we've heard from parents, there's a lot of, like, I want to call it busy work, but a lot of different activities take a lot of time, but leads to the same standard of writing to a complex text, or writing or comparing contrasting something. So you can actually say, no, we're not doing that. On Monday, first period, we're going to cover that. That's going to be, but it's not in Edgenuity. You need to be here, and I'm teaching that. So it's really sort of a blended. It's an interesting because no one's done this. I mean, no one's put 4,000 middle schoolers on Edgenuity. That is so we're learning how we can modify the curriculum, and I think that's a good thing. But the main thing we don't want to do is add things on top of things. That would not work. There's also Wednesday where they do have time. Students do have that time, and we're hoping students will take advantage of. Some students are working late, and even on the weekends, we're hoping they'll take advantage of that extra additional support that we put in the second semester.
And when you modify the program, it sounds like it's not going to hurt the testing portions of the Edgenuity. So when you're removing those, we're not going to see some down on that. Okay.
Yeah, the quizzes and unit tests, those don't get impacted. This is the actual instructional assignment.
Okay.
And the kids you heard and have read from parents saying, lots of things about some of the excessive note taking, things like this. But our teachers, the good news, we're doing it by content, we're doing it together, and we're including the cyber teachers. I think it's at the end of the next semester will be much better, a better curriculum for our students. And I think it's going to require that backward planning. How many hours does this take to complete this work? Because math has the most number of hours. But we did see in the curriculum that we had a lack of writing that we wanted in there, and we had a lack of lab that we needed in science that we needed to make sure we address in preparing for the following year.
And so kind of go back to the ones, so in high school, when we were looking at the failing, we're about 17% right now. How many of those are seniors?
Oh no, I'm going to have to get that information to you. Renee is going to be on later, and we're going to talk about graduation. I think we might be able to get that data before then. Okay. But seniors, I do know this. We have a Friday morning early meeting every Friday to touch base with high school leaders. And when we talk with them, they say it's the highest they've had. These seniors typically are doing better than what they are now. And so we've come up with a number of ways to address the concerns about that, whether it's through grading, and Renee's going to cover quite a bit of that in the next report.
Okay.
But I do not think they'd be at that level, that high of failure rate. That's the average. So, but I don't have that in front of me right now.
Okay. And then when you did mention about that Google extension for the attendance, I actually just saw that because I was downloading earlier today an extension for my Google Meet. So I think that's great, because I think that was another thing that we were hearing, is that from some parents, they felt that the Google Meets were just kind of taking attendance for a bit of the classroom time and not being fully on the instructional part, because we're trying to get all the kids. So I think that that would be very beneficial for all the teachers. So they're not having to spend that time trying to actually take physical attendance without that. And I think I see you, Luana, shaking your head, because I think that's where that was a struggle for a very good part of the first semester. And then the other thing is on high school, for the schedule that you guys have, you having it on the kind of the open day would be on Friday. So my question is when we were going to go to hybrid, Wednesday was going to be the cleaning day for the school. So how would this work if we go hybrid? So would the high schools end up going to the cleaning on Fridays versus Wednesdays if we end up being able to get them back in person?
Go ahead, LJ. Yeah, you're exactly right. Because when you look at the middle school schedule, Wednesday is supposed to be between two groups. I don't know if that's feasible or practical. I'd have to talk with Mike Baker Facilities and talk about that. I know the high school ILs, they worked hard on this schedule, and I think they wanted that because of the very thing Luana was talking about, is that instructional cycle. Allows a student to come first period, then see a teacher again on Wednesday in terms of that concept. So Luana, we did talk about this, I know.
Right. I believe that we might have to change that
We
to
may.
back to Wednesday when we went hybrid. That was discussed. If that continues to be a major piece of the hybrid puzzle is the cleaning piece.
Yeah, we may have to, just because of the break in the two different groups and the way the way the cleaning crews work. Right.
Right. Yeah. So that was where I'm wondering, because who knows if we're going to be able to. I mean, I know that we definitely want to get secondary back into the school for the hybrid. So that's my concern is if we end up doing this and then we are able to open it up to hybrid, then we're going to disrupt their schedule a bit on that. So I know that they worked really hard on this, but I'm just wondering kind of for the future if we do bring in hybrid. If that's going to cause.
Cleveland, I see Dr. Cleveland unmuted her mic there. So Dr. Cleveland?
I do believe from the information we've had, and again, we've not talked about it in great detail because secondary students haven't been allowed to come back yet. But I do know in elementary, they did not approve any plans. They did not have the cleaning day in the middle of the week. So I don't know if we will have the same thing for secondary, but honestly, I suspect that we will because of that desire to clean between two different cohorts. But we may be a long time from that. And so certainly for now, I think it works out. But, they might not approve the plan in the future if we did not have that Wednesday cleaning day. But we'll deal with that when we get to that point and have clearance to bring our students back.
Okay.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say I was done. Thank you.
Go ahead, Dr. Cleveland, if you want to kind of speak to everything before we go to everyone else.
Well, I'll just be very quick and saying a couple of things. I certainly want you to know that everyone is not in total agreement with this. No one's in total agreement with much of anything in the world that we're living in today. But I think it is really important that, it's based on the data we have. And I think you look at the data we have, and I don't think you can walk away and say that we could just continue doing what we were doing. So I think we've looked at the data. The other is I think we responded to the most consistent messages. Certainly there were differing messages, but the most consistent messages that we heard over and over again, this does address those. So while everybody may not be in agreement, not all parents, not all staff or whatever, I think that it certainly does reflect what we heard to be the most consistent message and the data that we were looking at. And then the last, I said it earlier, but I'll say it one more time. Whether you're in regular learning and the way things used to be, or whether you're in remote or whether you're in hybrid, you have to show up. And if you don't show up, you can't learn. And so we need help from our students and our parents. We can't make up for it if you do not show up. So we've got some things in place. If you haven't been really great about showing up consistently the first semester, we have some things built in that can help you, but you still have to do the job. You still have to come. You still have to participate in the class. And we're hoping, and again, some feedback from some other districts, including Oklahoma, was the structure seemed to work better for a lot of students than having it more loose the way we have it the first semester. And as I said, we're still hopeful. I'm very hopeful we might bring our secondary students back. And I think this would be the easiest transition for that. But this is data-based. I think that the feedback is the most consistent that we are across all grade levels, across all schools. And it does, again, emphasize that our staff is trying to make accommodations. Worked really hard to do that. But now we need students and parents to help us by getting those students there so that they can take advantage of the learning that we're offering. And to students or parents that are listening, it's not too late. You know, if you haven't done a great job up till now, we can still help you a lot if you will show up. Those teachers are working hard with students who are struggling, but you just can't work with the non-existent. The student who's not there, the student who closes their computer once the class starts. And so we really hope that this is a little more like school that we've traditionally had. Maybe that extra structure is going to help some of our students who have struggled with the structure in the first semester.
You know, Amanda, can I just, President Goldberg, I just wanted to say real quick, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate all the work that you put into this. I know that, Dr. Cleveland and I had talked about secondary a while back, and I could tell all the hard work that all you guys have put into this, both, Carl and Luana, and then all every in that instructional, because I know that it's so tough because you're having to switch from what we thought the first semester to what we're looking at the second semester. So I really do appreciate all the work that you put into this. And it really shows that, everybody's hurt. I mean, again, there's two different sides. You have some that really want more instructional online and some that don't. But I think that you really captured a lot what they were saying. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. I honestly have within my own family kids who want more instruction, kids who don't. So, I mean, even from family to family. Let's go over to Wynn Coleman. Do you have some questions or comments?
I don't. Catherine covered the things that I was just wondering about. I will reserve my questions and maybe comments when we get to the other presentation. So, but thank you so much. And I know, and I've said I can't imagine what it's like trying to kind of figure this out. And it's as the phrase is, building the airplane while you're flying. So I just appreciate all the effort.
Thank you, Wynn. And we'll go over to Noreen Scott.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions on the Wednesday for middle school. That there's is that mean that there are no teachers available on Wednesday for students to seek help?
No, absolutely not. The teachers are available for tutorial sessions. They could have open meets. In fact, they have this first semester been doing that. Asynchronous, they could provide a recording of what they've done, ask students to work on a particular assignment. Help me, LJ, anything else that I left out there? It's a good question, thank you.
Board Member Scott, the part of the rationale behind the 1 day of asynchronous is to ensure that students have plenty of time to do their assignments that are on their week at a glance, so that they can stay ahead both in middle school and high school. And so it gives them some uninterrupted time, but teachers are available they'll have their PLC meetings and their planning meetings and their professional learning, but their teams are creating tutorial schedules where, say, in a geometry PLC, there'll be a geometry teacher available at all times. And it could rotate between the teachers, but the idea being listening to that notion I said earlier that students missed not having that immediate feedback. So making sure that there's opportunity for students to get help in a just-in-time manner, no matter what day it is.
you. My second question is 40% failure rate or 32% or even 25% is a stunning number. Does that mean that 40% of the students just didn't show up? And that's why, and or is there a bell curve to this? And if so, the bell curve would be like 17 versus 100. I mean, I'm trying to understand, how do we have that kind of a failure rate?
Well, I think it's individual, Secretary Scott. I think in some cases they didn't log in, and we've tried to work to help them. I look at logins, and sometimes some of the students logged in maybe 10% of the time. In other cases, they've worked very, very hard. We did say that Edgenuity, and particularly at middle school, Edgenuity, if you're talking about that, because that's middle school numbers, is a rigorous course. In reading, so there's a certain reading level that they have to have, and to access that, there's a lot of vocabulary. Teachers have certainly had additional support, not only the regular meets, like at Pick a School Mountain View, but they have also had open Google Meets to help the students. I think the virtual platform itself across the state and across the nation is showing a lot of failure rate. And I know they've tried to establish engagement. In fact, ours is lower than a lot of districts, which isn't good, at 32%. And at high school at 17% is certainly at least double, maybe a little over double what we typically would have. So we're just trying to find ways to, but you're asking what's the reason? I think there's a number of different reasons at home. There could be at home that they have, they're taking care of a sibling. They could be that they don't have any support. They're not face-to-face with the teacher. It's just a very different learning environment. But we're trying these things here currently, particularly if we can offer help in the evenings and the weekends. I think you'll see some kids working at 1:32 in the morning. It's like they don't have a schedule. And I think this AB schedule would help us if we can, but again, it takes the counselors. We recognize the counselors tonight. It takes the student support team at the high school. It takes us reaching out and making phone calls, having those individual Google Meets with students. I mean, literally, I know teachers who make individual Google Meets with students and they don't show up. So it's a scary time for our students right now. Now, many students are doing well. Many students are actually in Edgenuity are just doing very, very well, and others are not.
So, Carl, what I'm hearing you say is that Ingenuity is a national platform. And so now our kids are competing with kids in Connecticut or Illinois as far as the baseline work. And we maybe weren't as prepared. Is that what you're saying?
No, I probably misspoke on that. I'm just saying I just said that it is rigorous in the sense that there is a lot of material. You go into that course, if you've gone in one, it's like the pacing of it's pretty intense. And so in a regular classroom environment, a teacher can adjust and facilitate and work on that. In this environment, it's a paced, if you're behind, there's a bar, you're either on track or you're not. So I think actually in some ways the lack of flexibility could have caused some of the failure. So kids get behind, and you've seen it in the actual, when you ask kids, what's working, not working in the survey, I'm so far behind, I'll never catch up. So that is, and I'm not saying it is a rigorous curriculum, but our curriculum is also rigorous. It's on a national standard. If you look at our math that we adopted called Envision, it's a tremendous math program. But teachers can take that and work with that more flexibly. So when we first selected Edgenuity, it works well to cyber, but remember, they come in 3 days a week. They're required to come in and get extra, break into groups, get additional support. When you do that online, it's hard to engage kids when they're behind. Some kids are ahead. Some kids will complete their course 3 to 4 weeks in advance of the semester, or even or the year. So those are the experiences we have at cyber, is that they have to have time management. And middle school students, and time management is an oxymoron. So, you've had middle school students, children. The two don't work real well. There's also that ability to organize your time and executive skill set that we want kids to have, but they're teenagers. They're adolescents. And so I think this platform is hard for them to navigate.
So we've been saying that we as school board and as management and as faculty are all learning. I just have a real problem with failing 32% of anybody. That is such a lack of motivation to drive people forward. Success motivates people. And I mean, I just can't see consigning 32% of our middle school students to failure. That's frightening to me.
Right. And Secretary Cullen, we even talked about turning off the bar and the pacing. How do we get the pacing? Because you can have a kid way up here, way advanced, and a kid that's way behind. So what does the teacher do? Well, you're trying to bring them all into a lesson, but they're all in different lessons. So I think our AB schedule is going to help that, and the compaction of the curriculum, working collectively. But again, I think they're going to need additional help. That's why we put that in the plan, is to give them additional time and support.
Well, Carl, I think that's great going forward, but what are we doing for this semester with 32% failure?
Well,
Dr.
we did
Cleveland's raising her hand.
what are we doing now? Well, we're in those finals right now, the first semester, and we have given them additional support. Hopefully they'll do well in their finals in the last couple of weeks of school, and that will go down. Go ahead, Dr. Cleveland.
Well, you just said what I was going to say. We put in a lot of additional supports to try to push these kids through. And we, as you know, the state is coming in with 50 is the lowest score you can give anybody now. So that will, in effect, help students who want to get caught up to average in. They're going to be able to do that. But I want to raise a completely different question, and that question is, the way we grade. There's an article that I read from the Washington Post, and I just went and printed it because I remember reading it earlier in the month. And it's just saying nationally, more students than ever in history of the country got Fs in the first term. But it raises the question about the whole issue of A through F grades. Are they even fair in a pandemic? So, is it really? I mean, how accurate are they given all of the other things that are going on? And so the question, a lot of our colleges and universities have gone to allowing students to pass fail. UNM has done it, New Mexico State, for some classes you can do a pass fail. A lot of people are looking at different ways. We maintain the students still need to get the content. It's not, getting the content is not a punishment. It's what you've got to have in order to build a foundation for the future. So, our goal is to keep these kids in school, keep working with them, to accelerate the learning and give them as many support. So we're not going to give them evening support, tutorial support, some additional things that hopefully are going to move off this high percentage of Fs. But, I want to go back to something that Board Member Scott said. Over the years, our students that have been on Ingenuity have stayed up with the students across the country. They have done just as well out of Rio Rancho Cyber as they have any place else in the country. So you kind of think, well, what's different now? I think what's different now is that most of the students who chose that cyber learning, they chose to do it that way. They chose that learning delivery style. A lot of kids are in this learning in terms of cyber, they didn't choose it. It's not their best delivery system and they'd like something different. But the pandemic has made it impossible for us to do that. So I think that's why we keep trying to find different ways to reach out and engage students. I do think when all is said and done, our students are going to be better at learning in terms of using technology than they've ever been before. And I think they're going to be better prepared to take those college level classes that require this same type of learning. But this problem is not a Rio Rancho problem. I can tell you that. I can show you articles where, across the country, they have 40, 50, 60% failure rate. So we're continuing to whittle away at that and to provide those additional supports, because honestly, that's not a number we want to live with either. But again, you have to come to school. And we've had some students decide not to come to school. You can't learn if you aren't there to be taught. And so that's why we need the help of students and parents and community to make sure those students are there and are taking advantage of what we're delivering. We've got some incredible things going on instructionally with some of our teachers. They're offering some fabulous things, but you have to be there in order to take advantage of it. And if you choose not to be there, I don't know what the answer is, because we cannot just magically make someone learn if they don't show up. And you know what greater thing do you learn in life? You know, 90% of life is just showing up. And so it's been hard, and families have had struggles, and kids have had struggles. You all have talked a lot. The board's talked about social emotional issues with kids, depression, anxiety, all of those things that play into this. So there is no easy solution. There is no simple answer. As if there was, somebody would have figured it out a long time ago. But I think right now we just keep our nose to the grindstone, and we just keep working with every kid to try to get them through. And I think that's what our staff is committed to doing. And I do think that this more structured approach is going to be good for a lot of students. To your point, President God, was not for every student. Some of our students have done quite well with this, and they like it. They like the flexibility, and they've just learned how to work the system well. But a lot of our students have done. One of the things that I was reading in this article, the highest performing large district in the country is Montgomery County, Maryland. They have for a large district, really impressive achievement. But they said that the failure rate in math and English jumped as much as 6-fold for the most vulnerable students in their district. So it is a challenging time. But you know, even if it's challenging, we can't just throw up our hands and say, "Oh well, you know, it's just pandemic or it's just COVID or whatever." We still have to try to do our very best to get these students through. And I really applaud the efforts of our staff and our administrators who've been trying really hard to make that happen. And I thank you for your questions tonight about, you know, how is this going to work out, and I think it is in response to all of the concerns we've heard. We've tried to take those to heart, tried to integrate them into this proposal, and I guarantee you it's absolutely going to be perfect. No, and I bet you it's not going to be perfect, but we really hope it will meet the needs of more students, and we'll get those students through. And I can tell the students and parents, get your kids in school, get them on, you know, on Google Meets, get them there. We will work with you. But if your kids aren't there, we cannot teach them. They cannot learn.
President Galbraith, I think you're muted.
I was having a really good conversation.
I could tell.
I usually do that so much better. There you go. I must say, Carl, did you have something before I go to Jeff to give questions?
No, I'd like to. Yeah, let's go to the board members. But there's something I'd like to share at the end, though.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Vice President Morgan.
You know, Amanda, I saw Wynn Coleman with her hand up. I was just going to have to go ahead, Wynn.
I had saw that article that Dr. Cleveland was referring to, and I this isn't about when I say this. I think the real challenge is really looking at not only getting our students through, but setting them up so when they leave our district, they're in a position to move forward. My concern, and like I said, this isn't about responsibility, but my concern is what's happening as our students are getting ready to graduate, go off to college. You know, as I think with my husband going through the health problems that he has gone through, I want his doctors to be the ones that were really prepared. I mean, as prepared as possible. And my concern is how we get these students where they need to be so they can go on when they leave our district and do these things and accomplish these things. And I, when I think about the middle school and that I guess it's not a question, but just a concern. And when I think about that percentage for the middle school, is really just setting them up for success and also setting up our high school students when they leave the district. So that's just really all I wanted to say.
Thanks, Lynn. And Jeff, did you have anything now?
Board member Cullen raised her hand up again. I'm just going to be the nice guy today and let everybody go. That's all. Go ahead, Cullen.
Say, go ahead. So I did have as we're kind of talking about this, the tutoring in the evenings and the weekends, is that going to be a rotating basis with these teachers? I'm just kind of wondering how that plan is working for them to work on the weekends, because I know they're working a lot of hours as it is. So, is this on a basis, or you pick the short?
Well, we may have to go to a rotating basis depending on, because the workload, you saw the data on the workload in the survey. It didn't look real good at the time. So you're saying, well, Carl, how can you put more workload? We actually have a lot of teachers who want to work. Now, granted, we're going to pay them, I think, the same rate as we pay for tutoring or the summer SLC, a whole $30 per hour. But I mean, but we've had a great turnout. And this is not just at the 612. We have elementary. We're going to look at homework club. And it's one of my favorite things. I did it in Enchanted Hills. I think it'll be very beneficial to students. And but we're really looking at probably a cohort of 6 teachers, or 6 to 10 at the middle school, and it's the same teachers to get consistent what they're doing and get relationship building. It's not just, yes, I'm going to provide academic support, but I get to know you a little bit. But we may have to rotate depending on what happens and how people, they can get tired. So that's the plan right now. And so far, we've had a lot of people say, yes, this will be good for our students.
Okay, and then when we're kind of looking at cyber, when we did Edgenuity with cyber, middle school went in 3 days a week. And so how much time were they actually getting this first semester, these middle school students, of face-to-face time with the teachers throughout the week? We're using the Edgenuity system.
There were required minutes or the additional. It depended on the student. I'd have to go back and count those hours up and look at the schedules. We had 2 different schedules. I mean, LJ, can you talk to that? Well, I'd probably Renee, but I think they did have at least 2 periods per day. And then they had those open Google Meets. In fact, at Mountain View, we had instruction every day plus open Google Meets. So I'd have to go back and look at their schedules. But I think the randomness or the inconsistency across has hurt us as a district in that regard. So I think we'd be consistent here. And when we're looking at compacting the curriculum, we'll do that across the content at all schools. So we're basically, if we're taking something out, we're putting it in, but it's that across the content in all the schools. But the schedule we're proposing has more direct face-to-face instructional time, particularly at the high school, even more so.
Right. And so with the middle school, are they all going to pretty much on the same subject at the same time? So they're moving it along? Because I know we were having some people, like we talked about, going a little fast, some that fell behind. So they're kind of staying together, all the middle schools together, so that when they're ready to move on, especially ones that are ready to go on to high school next year, we want to make sure that they all kind of flow definitely on this last semester, being all together. And so are the middle schools all working together? I know they meet regularly.
Yes. They meet. Well, Luana meets regularly with the content leads, and we meet regularly with the principals, Renee and myself. But that's the intent. We have a set of standards. For example, math. It meets the state core standards, and those are the standards we would have assessed at the end of the year at the final, and to make sure that students are prepared for the next year. So that's the intent of the backwards planning.
All right, thank you.
But I had just one thing to that. I think I had a good friend who went to a district in Louisiana shortly after Katrina. And one of the things she said is, number one, you can get caught up. And number two, it's not a one-year thing. So I just want to throw out for the board we will probably have some things to do the next 2 or 3 years to be able to move our students to address some of the concerns that you've raised. It's not going to be just a quick fix and it's all done. But from folks who went through that horrible situation, they said you can get caught up, and if you're smart, you not only can get caught up, but you learn from it and you accelerate that learning, which is what I think has been addressed this evening by Luana Coleman. So I don't think this is just a one semester and done kind of thing. I think we have to look at summer. I think we will probably have to look at the next 2 or 3 years and kinds of services and supports that we give to ensure that we get those students ready to leave us at their senior year, or we get those students as prepared as you would like them to be for high school. But it's not an impossible task, and there have been others that have done it well, and it certainly is not a hopeless situation. And I just want to kind of emphasize that is that we can do what we need to do. It will sure be a whole lot easier when this pandemic is behind us. Then we will be able to, I think, do that in an easier fashion. But anyway, I just, it's not going to be a one semester and done. To your point, both of you made that comment. Yes, it's going to take us a while to get, especially our most vulnerable kids, get them caught back up. It's going to take some different things than what we've done. It's going to take some resources, and I hope that the state is taking that into consideration, and I think they are in terms of funding for next year.
Yeah, Dr. Clean, we do have the 10 additional instructional days, which is helpful in this case. But Luana, who brought in AYD, actually academic youth development, I think the expansion of that, it was very successful in a virtual mode this last summer. That transition for those 8th graders up to 9th grade. So we really need to look at that transition for every grade now, every student, and what can we do differently this summer? And thank you, Luana. It's been a very, very powerful program.
Okay. Jeff, did you have anything that you wanted to say?
No, I'm all good. Everything has been said. Questions have been answered. Thank you, Mr. Lieberman and Ms. Coleman. Thank you so much for all your work. And I'm like Dr. Cleveland. It's going to take time. But I hate to see the failure rate, but I trust and have confidence in the teachers that they'll continue to work with these students until we get to the level that they need to be at in order for them to be successful when they leave. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Jeff. And I do actually have just a couple of questions. So for that Friday, and maybe this is probably for Luana, maybe, that Friday for the high school, so do they have to answer their question at a certain time, or is it kind of just open throughout the day? I'm asking because my kids are always getting marked absent.
President Galbraith, that's been the question of the semester, right? My Google Classroom question. And so we're going to try leaving it open for the day.
Okay.
The question, some teachers are wanting to make, depending on what their week at a glance looks like, it might be an assignment that students need to turn in on that day. But to in response to your question, it has been a challenge, and that's one reason we are really excited about the Google Meets as part of the primary focus of the attendance. But we still have to take attendance on Friday, so that Google attendance will be taken sometime during that day, due by the end of the day.
So can we keep that the same across the district too? Like, because I think even my own kids' teachers do it differently, but so where it's just, if it's going to be open, let it be open for everyone for at least to start. And then, because yeah, I'm like, you missed a question. Yeah, happens every night. You missed your question. And that would be helpful just to have it the same. Okay.
Thank you.
That that would be great. And then, one last thing, and I know I joke a lot, but I do want to say, and I'm looking down, I think I'm missing hands and stuff like that because I am living this with my own kids, and so I'm cautiously optimistic with this new schedule and how it will be. I truthfully do have within my own house, I have 4 kids in the district. You've heard me say that before, and they're all over the place and have and how they're learning and how they're doing. And so I'm hopeful that this is really gonna. I'm very appreciative to all the work that was put in to this. I know some of our teachers aren't the happiest, and I know some of our parents are. Everyone's back and forth, just like Dr. Cleveland said. But truthfully, as a parent, where I'm at with this is I'm just hoping to make it through the semester, and I hope that everyone can just be patient as we work through this and give it a try. We keep talking about those, our failure rates. What I'm seeing within my own home is that my kids are more used to these platforms now and kind of get it a little bit better. And so I'm hoping that we'll see that in the district too. That now that they're a little bit more comfortable, they know where things are, they know where to find them, they are used to all those things, that we'll see those rates kind of go up and be better, just because the kids understand it a little bit more. So those are kind of my comments. I don't really have a ton of questions. Like I said, I'm just cautiously optimistic and pondering kind of everything as a parent, but I am grateful for everything that was all, and you didn't have a lot of time to do it. And so thank you for all that you did. Carl, is there anything, last words? I know you said you had some last words. I don't know if you've already said them. Not last words before.
No, I do think, and getting back to Secretary Scott's comment, is 33% is not okay. I have worked with Heidi. I've worked with the principal at Cyber, and we tend to see kids do better as the 30% kids don't do it as well at the beginning. They get better towards the end. I think our teachers have gotten better also, President Galbraith, in terms of how they understand Edgenuity, and our coordinators. They really didn't have never logged into it when we started in August. So I think working collaborative, we're going to get there. And if it doesn't work, and Dr. Cleveland and I have talked about this, we'll try something else. We've got to get, we can't have 30%. So anyway, that's my final words, except for one thing. LJ is retiring, and LJ and I, we and Dr. Cleveland, we've worked 15 years together, and she'll be retiring effective, I think it's January 31st, but her last day actually I think is somewhere close in December-ish. And so I just want to take just a minute to thank her for doing so much to raise expectations for our students in this district. One thing about LJ is she has high expectations, and she didn't know we're going to recognize her, but I apologize for that. But when she came in, she said all kids have AP potential, and it's sort of interesting. She sees the potential in all students, and you definitely expect that. And that's why you talk so much about a guaranteed viable curriculum, and people go, oh gosh, if we hear that again. But it's really about what kids do after they get to school and what opportunities they have in life. And I want to thank you for that. I could list on and on. I'm do 5 things. Just let's mention 5 big things we've done together in the district. PLCs. We brought, I think I started that in 2003 or 4. You came in around 2005-ish. I said, Carl, we got to beef this up. And that collaboration, what you do with teachers every day are so important. And we're going to miss that because you have built a relationship with those teachers, and that's a key to a good district. Think about all these terms: AP Potential, AVID, Cleveland High School. That was a lot of fun, wasn't it? Traveling across the nation, looking for the best programs and making sure that building really support our programs. The adoption process, really getting a solid adoption process, and just really looking at direct instructional time. Are we really getting our kids where they need to be? And I want to thank you for all those and give an opportunity to the board to recognize you because you're definitely been a change agent. The status quo isn't okay, and I appreciate that about you. So thank you, LJ.
I'd like to add a couple of things to that. I've been going through crossing out everything I was going to say that Carl's already said. So going through, I just want to echo that and thank Luana for all she's meant to our district. And, you know, one of the things you hope is that you leave something better than what you found it. And certainly that is the case. And, you know, I think about, you know, dragging us into some of those best practices, building a strong instructional coaching program, as Carl mentioned, the PLCs. But one of the things I appreciated so much was the comprehensive approach to professional development, and knowing that our teachers were the core of what we do in other groups as well. And you know, sometimes in my role as Presbyterian, where we talk about, you know, whether we'll spend money for professional development, and my comment was, well, what better thing do you give a patient than a highly skilled nurse? Well, what thing do you give a child? What can you give a child that's better than a highly trained teacher? And so making our, you know, helping our teachers be as good as we know they can be and as they are. So that comprehensive approach to professional learning, and then specific programs that we worked on, whether it was the Common Core, state standards, huge undertaking, the next gen science standards. And you put AP on the map for us, for Rio Rancho. Senator Bingaman wanted you to come for that very purpose, was advanced placement. But the last thing I want to mention is the technology, dragging us into, you know, as we went through Future Ready, no easy task. But I think about where we would have been, you know, we've struggled as it was, what it would have been like had we not done Future Ready and this pandemic had hit us. We would have been so far behind. I don't know what we would have ever done. So working with Paul, Romero, Terry Myers, and others to not only see this computer as a tool, but to see it as a whole new way of learning, whole new way of thinking, whole new world that we are living in, and help our students be successful in that world. So I just want to say thank you to Luana. Thank you for all you've done. She's got great plans after her retirement. We told her that we hope she'll come back and do some special projects for us as we have need, and she said she would be glad to do that. And my last request for Luana is, please don't send me any wish you were here cards, because she's got some of the neatest things planned, and so I wish her well. And but we'll miss her a lot, and just so thankful she came our way and worked with us these last 15 years.
I'll let you speak, Luana. Go ahead.
I'm not sure I can, but I'm both Dr. Cleveland and Carl mentioned relationships, and that's been so key to these 15 years. And I really am deeply grateful for the relationships, friendships, for the learning together. And it's gone by fast. And I really am deeply altered due to my experience and time in Rio Rancho. So I'm not going very far, and depending on COVID, I may not be going very far at all for a while. So I look forward to continuing to be a part of this family, and I'm deeply appreciative.
Thank you, Luana. I think you could see all the board people wiping tears and all sorts of things. And you know, I haven't been on the board that long, and in that short time that I've been able to be around you, I just have come to really appreciate your wisdom and everything that you bring, and that you're willing to work so hard. Like I said, with this last thing that we're talking about, you didn't have a lot of time to put these things together, and you have done it. And so I want to thank you too. And when Dr. Cleveland told me you're retiring, no. So it's sad to lose someone so wonderful. Anyone from the board want to say? Go ahead, Catherine. I think Catherine wants to say something.
Luana, I was so sad to hear you ready to retire. But if anybody that deserves to retire, certainly you do. I mean, since I've been on the board, I mean, I just can't even, all the changes, just even when I've been on it, that you've had to go through for the district. And you just always had a heart for our students. and you always put them first. And it always just showed, that you really always had them in the forefront and you did everything for them. And I can't tell you how much I've appreciated you. And I've just grown to adore you over the years. And I was really sad to hear you going. But I mean, I hope that you have just the best retirement, and hopefully this COVID, with the vaccine coming out, you can go and actually enjoy it after this, so that you can go and travel and do all that you want to do. But I'm sad to see you go, but I'm happy as well, because I know that you have a new adventure planned ahead. And I have to just say, with all the years of experience working with you, you've just been absolutely wonderful, and I will miss you. So you got me crying.
Anyone else? Wynn, did you want to say anything?
Yes, I just appreciate everything that Luana has done and contributed to the district. I had to actually turn off my camera for a second and grab the one thing that I will just treasure in my my time getting to know Luana was when we did the Dare to Lead, and she just lives this. She's an example of this, and really just kind of getting in there and rumbling with the uncomfortable. And it was just a treasure to get to know her better. So you will be definitely missed.
Thanks, Wynn. Jeff, did you want to add anything?
Now, I didn't get a chance to spend as much time with LJ as some of the other board members, but the one thing that I will remember about you is the mindset you had, that if I could just let the kids know that we'll support them, we're behind them, let them know not to quit. I mean, to me, that's the most important thing. And to let the teachers know that we're behind you, don't give up, we're here for you. And miracles happen when people know that they have support and that they have somebody behind them. Big things take place when they know they have support and somebody's behind them telling them, keep on, you can do this, you can get through this. And that's what I saw in you from the time I started participating in board meetings up. And I mean, look at you today. I mean, you're about ready to leave, but you're going to make sure that this program is successful. And that says a lot about you. So thank you so much. I really appreciate all the work that you've done in the short time I've had a chance to spend with you.
Thank you, Jeff. And Noreen Scott.
Luana, thank you so much for your professionalism and for always coming well prepared for every one of our meetings, to do exactly what Jeffrey said, to push forward for the students and the faculty. And I really admire that about you and wish you the very best.
Okay, anyone else on anything else? This has been an emotional meeting. I feel like I didn't know coming into it, but thank you all. Thanks, Luana. Thank you again for all that you do. Appreciate it. So, okay. I think we're going to move on to our next item. Okay. All right. So for our next item, and we just want to say appreciate the last report. For our next item is, we're just going to have a quick discussion. This doesn't have to be a long discussion, but I thought it would set a good precedent to have a moment to talk about our last conference that we went to. We went to a conference last weekend with the New Mexico School Boards Association. And I just really wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about anything that really stood out to you. If there was some things that stood out to you, if there's things that you feel like we need to kind of look into as a school board for the future, things that we should, kind of keep on our radar or move on and talk to Dr. Cleveland about, things like that. And so you don't have to have anything to say, but if you do, I'm gonna just kind of go around and give you an opportunity to do so. So I think I'm gonna go across my screen. I'll start with Noreen Scott and see if Noreen has anything she'd like to put out.
Yeah, I think that one of the things I appreciated last year when we went to the conference, and again this year, is the high esteem that our school district is held by so many other districts around the state. And it made me really appreciative of all of you board members. Catherine and when you have brought real leadership on a statewide level to our community, and I always feel that when we go to these conferences, and even though it was remote this year, I felt that leadership and that positive approach that the school district is known for. And I really want to give kudos to the entire board for how well everyone works together and how much we care. So that always comes through to me, and I really am joyful, especially in this holiday season, to have all of you in my life.
Thank you, Secretary Scott. Jeff, would you like to add anything about the conference? Anything that stood out to you?
But yeah, one thing that stood out to me the most was the board members seem to have a no quit attitude. They talked a lot about the challenges that they faced from the pandemic and all the things that they faced on a regular basis, but their focus was always on, and they echoed this all the time, what's best for the students. And that's the piece that I was really excited about. Everybody still had the passion and the concern to make sure that no kid get left behind, that every kid still got the best education, that every kid still got what they needed to get better. So that was the thing that was echoed over the 3-day time frame about staying focused on what we need to stay focused on to make sure the kids get what they need. You muted, Amanda. You are muted. You was having a good conversation, though. You were rolling.
It's like the worst meeting. All right.
You were rolling.
I know. It's, yeah, okay. I'm just not myself today. So I wanted to go to Wynn. And what I was saying is I also wanted to thank Wynn for her questions when we were in that mental health presentation about policy and such, because we had already been talking about that in our boards. But I did want to give Wynn, go ahead, Wynn, you can go ahead and take an opportunity.
No, I just, what I was so grateful for, as much as when we come together, even on the board of directors, I really, messages are going back and forth. I miss you. I miss us being together and everything. But I just, what I appreciate is I think that the virtual setting has allowed guest speakers to participate in a way that they have not, maybe because they'd have to fly in and do those things. And so I'm grateful that we've really had that opportunity, whether it's from NSBA. And I have to say that I repeatedly hear, not only from within our district or our state, but on a national level, how much respect our executive director for the New Mexico School Board Association has. And he puts together with his staff an incredible amount of training, whether it's advocacy, and we are coming into a 60-day session and kind of what that looks like for our districts, to how to virtually work with our families and the mental health aspect. So I thought it was a great group of sessions.
Thank you, Board Member Coleman. And then Captain Cullen.
I don't have much to say, but it was just a great conference. I did like it was being able to virtual. It was allowed a lot of people to be able to attend different classes throughout the 3-day week that sometimes they have to travel a bit to get there. So it was really good to see that. And I do agree with Jeff that really they always have the focus of the students, and we're coming up on a tough session, and they really covered some of the items that we're going to be looking at, and as well as all the issues that we're facing in COVID. I mean, whoever knew that we would be going with this for so long with so many of the challenges, and everybody's really focused on what can we do for our students and support our districts and our administrators and our superintendents on getting through this. So it was a great conference as always. And I think our next one will be February. Yeah, February. So February, March. I think it's so I highly encourage everybody to go there as well, to watch it because we won't be going up to Santa Fe this year, I don't think. So thank you.
Thank you. And so on that note, just as we go to conferences in the future, I think we'll just kind of use this. And like I said, it doesn't ever have to be a long conversation, but just an opportunity to those things that stuck out to you. Or so we'll keep that as something to put on the agenda in the future, and just keep it in mind as you go to your next conference. So thank you, everyone. Anything else anyone wanted to add? Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, we'll now go to approve the consent agenda. Are there any questions or discussion on one of these items that it might need to be moved off the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay.
This is Board Member Jeff Morgan. I second.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Jane, can you take a roll call vote for us?
Yes, I will. Vice President Morgan,
Yes.
Secretary Scott,
Yes.
Board Member Cullen.
Yes.
Thank you. Board Member Coleman,
Yes.
President Galbraith.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Okay, moving on to business. First, we have a report. The Board of Education met in a closed executive session on December 3rd, 2020 under Section 10-15-1H7 of the New Mexico Open Meetings Act to discuss pending litigation with legal counsel. The matters discussed in the closed meeting were limited only to those specified in the notice of a separate closed meeting. Item B is to consider the approval of the November 16th, 2020 unapproved board minutes. Were there any changes that needed to take place on those minutes?
I move approval of the board minutes for November 16, 2020.
Thank you. We have
This
a
is
motion.
Board Member,
Sorry, I forget to identify myself.
Board Member Jeff Morgan. I second.
Okay, thank you. Jen, can you take a roll call vote for us on this?
Yes, I will. Vice President Morgan,
Yes.
Secretary Scott,
Yes.
Board Member Cullen,
Yes.
Board Member Coleman,
Yes.
President Galbraith.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion carries. Okay. For item C, consider the approval of the December 1st, 2020 Finance Committee meeting unapproved board minutes. Any changes on those minutes as they've been presented?
I make a motion to approve the December 1st, 2020 Finance Committee meeting minutes.
This is Board Member Scott, and I second.
Okay, and Jane, can you take a roll call for us? Roll call vote?
Yes. Vice President Morgan,
Yes.
Secretary Scott,
Yes.
Board Member Cullen,
Yes.
Board Member Coleman,
Yes.
Vice President Galbraith.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion carries. Okay, and then item D, consider approving a temporary adjustment, revising the RRPS demonstration of competency plan for the class of 2021. Renee Sasueto, I want to say your name wrong, Renee, I'm so sorry. Our secondary school improvement officer will present along with Luana Coleman, our executive director of secondary curriculum and instruction, and Dr. Happy Miller, our executive director of research, assessment, data, and accountability.
So as a retirement gift, we're going to let Luana out of this presentation. So
Nice.
I'll just be happy in myself.
Oh.
So Happy, I'll let you start.
Okay, next slide, please. So President Galbraith, members of the board, Dr. Cleveland, thank you for this opportunity. My name is Happy Miller, and I'm the Executive Director of Research, Assessment, Data, and Accountability. As you are aware, students not only need to meet the course requirements, but they usually need to also meet a demonstration of competency in order to graduate. The state has provided a menu of options to students, and through the class of 2021, local boards of education have also had the opportunity to provide options for students to demonstrate competency in order to meet the graduation requirements. This year has been an unusual year by all accounts, and due to COVID, it has been hard to provide all of the normal options that we do for students in order to demonstrate competency. So the Public Education Department recently provided additional flexibilities to the districts, and that flexibility, which needs to be approved by the Board of Education, it is your choice, is that any student meeting the course requirements for graduation during the 2020-21 school year will be considered to have met their local demonstration competency requirements, rather than having to complete a separate demonstration of competency. So this would include those students meeting course requirements for graduation by July 31st, 2021. Primarily, these are members of the class of 2021. However, it could include some members of the class of 2020 who are in their 5th year, or it could include members of the class of 2022 who are graduating early.
So that will be the only part of this presentation that you'll actually be voting on. But we thought that you might also be interested in other strategies that we're looking at for those seniors to help with graduation. And this will, of course, these are strategies that may be used, and this will be good through July 30th, 2021. Next slide, please, Jane. So what we're looking at, in addition to the ADC, and that's going to make a huge difference. What it will mean is that we don't have any certificate of completions this year. So anyone who qualifies for graduation would actually earn a diploma should you decide to approve that, the ADC. Other things that we're looking at doing, the first one is a waiver of Rio Rancho public school credits from 26 to the state required 24. Now, we would still offer, of course, we want students to earn that diploma of distinction. Rio Rancho has always had higher standards when it comes to graduation requirements. So a diploma of distinction requires 28 credits with some parameters around those credits. A diploma from Rio Rancho Public Schools is normally 26 credits, also with parameters around those credits. The state requires 24. Basically, the difference that you're going to see between what the state requires and the Rio Rancho Public School requirements, Rio Rancho requires an additional science, so 4 credits in science. The state requires 3. Rio Rancho requires that fine arts elective and a technology elective. So those are some of the classes that could possibly be waived. The other ones would simply be, not simply, but they would be electives. So everyone is still going to have, you're required to have 4 math credits, 4 social studies, 4 English, and 3 science. Should you ask for the waiver for the 24 credits? So that's one of the first ones. We did this May of last year and had, it's really, it was a handful of kids that waived to the New Mexico requirements. I don't know what that will look like this year. The second option for support is an Algebra 2 waiver exemption. Now, this is something that the state offers, and it usually has to be signed by your sophomore year. Your parents, counselor, students have to discuss this, and it's usually signed by the sophomore year. PED is offering that waiver. It needs to be signed by the end of this semester for it to be appropriate for a senior. We usually really do not support this waiver because many of the ADCs that we normally have in effect are dependent on the completion of Algebra 2. So it's just not, it's usually not very effective to waive Algebra 2. You need to pass that to be able to pass ADCs. But they are allowing that waiver. The important thing to remember is that you will still have to have 4 math credits. So you're not waiving a math credit, you're just waiving the Algebra 2 class. So you will still have to have 4 math credits. Another support, and this will really be in effect for every senior and actually every student right now in high school. There is a credit requirement where you either have to take an AP course, an honors course, and this is verbiage from the PED, a dual credit course, or a distance learning course. Well, we've all been distance learning for this full semester, so every student will have fulfilled that, that credit requirement. So we are looking at, and right now this is for seniors only, offering Edgenuity Boot Camp to recover credits for seniors. And what we're going to do, these are going to be Edgenuity courses. They will take the prescriptive test at the beginning. So they'll be able to remove all information that they can prove that they have learned through that test. They'll only be taking a course on the standards that they were not successful at. And then they'll also be able to pre-test through that. So that just basically means they're going to be able to move through it a little faster. However, they're still only going to be, they still will be having to learn about, study, be tested on the standards that they were not successful in. So that's instead of, you know, your typical summer courses or the full Edgenuity course, we're looking at offering these for credit recovery purposes. We also are offering scholarship money available to students who were not, so some students have already taken those credit recovery courses, but they haven't paid the fees. And so therefore it hasn't gone onto their transcript. We're offering venues for the students to have those fees basically waived so that, because we know a lot of families, people are out of jobs, people, they just can't pay for those credit recovery courses right now. So we're offering ways to get those fees waived that they, for classes that they have already taken. And then we're also looking at the courses that seniors need to take this next semester as credit recovery. We're going to offer them at no cost to the seniors. And those are the ways that we hope to support seniors to make sure that we get to the graduation line. And I think we're ready for the next slide, which is going to be, we will stand for questions should you have any. Well, this, okay, so this is the, sorry, Jane, you were right, I was wrong. That's the, basically what you'll need to be voting on, which is the additional demonstration of competency plan that Happy spoke to.
Okay, sorry, I was just working through it.
No, that's okay. Yeah, and with that, we stand for questions.
Okay. Thank you, Renee. We'll start with Wynn Coleman. You have any questions, comments?
I don't at this point.
Okay. Go over to Noreen Scott.
I'm glad to see that you're offering some ways for kids to remediate through this situation, and I thank you for your efforts and your thoughtful efforts behind getting this done. Thank you.
You know, and I'm going to hold for a second before I go. I like to ask Dr. Cleveland to speak, and I'm just all off tonight. So Dr. Cleveland, do you want to go ahead and talk before I go to the rest of the board?
Go ahead and go to the rest of the board, and I'll close out after.
Okay, sounds good. All right, Vice President Morgan.
Yeah, I just like what Noreen said. I think it's a great idea because of what we're going through we're not lowering our standards for the kids. We're just giving them an opportunity to come up with other creative ways to achieve what we're trying to get them to achieve. And I really like the outside the box thinking. That's a pretty good approach. So thank you so much. I like that.
Thank you. And then Catherine Cullen.
So Renee, so on the credits, gosh, this new system drives me crazy. I'm trying to go slide to slide. So the waiver of the credits, that's a waiver just with us within the district, because we don't need to get a waiver from the state because the state's already at 24 and we're the ones that require 26. And I was trying to find it. That's correct, right? And I saw your head, yeah. So I was trying to find, because you were saying that we only need to vote in reference to the those other changes. I don't see it, so I just want to make sure. We didn't have 26 credits in our policy, correct?
Correct. The only thing that you have to vote on is the demonstration, the change in the demonstration of competency plan.
Okay. Because we didn't specify those credit hours as being required within our policy of 26. Because we would need to waive that, because we would have to vote on that if it was in policy, and I was trying to find that in the policies real quick. But I'm assuming that, because I'm trying to go through that really quickly on this system, it would be driving me crazy, but I don't think it's in policy. Isn't that procedures?
You talk,
Yeah, I need to double check on that also, but.
Because if we had it as 26 hours, I mean, I'm not 20, I don't know why I keep saying hours. I keep thinking like my CE credits. So 26 credits, if that was under a board policy, then we would need to waive that to go to 24, but I don't see it in here. So maybe somebody can, Dr. Cleveland, is that right? It's not in policy of the 26?
I don't believe it is, but you also have the other option is we also have the authority to issue a New Mexico high school diploma. And so as long as you meet the requirements for the state of New Mexico, you qualify for a New Mexico high school diploma. So, you know, and so you have that option as well, where people can get, you know, a New Mexico high school diploma. And I believe in this situation, we talked about the possibility of some students getting a New Mexico high school diploma and others maintaining the Rio Rancho and Cleveland diploma. Renee, what was the final discussion on that? Did I miss anything on that? But I thought, you know, the 24 is there simply because it's already there as a state diploma.
Correct. It is there as the state diploma. Catherine, I think that you have a good point. I don't think that it's in board policy, but I do need to confirm that.
Yeah, because if it's in policy, we'll need to waive that for our regular diplomas. Otherwise, if it's in a procedure, then we're okay. I just trying to do that real quickly. I just thought of that. So it takes me a bit to go through my policies. So if it was something like that, then we would need to waive that as well. Or, you know, for this year, because I'm supportive of it. Obviously, I mean, this is a very trying time. I know that because Independence does 24 credits versus 26. Correct. So most likely, I'm thinking it's not specific in there, except for maybe the distinction, the certificate of distinction.
So I did just get a text from Jana who said she looked it up and it's not in policy.
All right, thank you, Jana. Just to do that real quick while I was talking. So then we're fine doing that one waiver on that. So okay, just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Oh, and there's Luana.
I'll let her add if she wants to add. Do you want to add, Luana?
Well, I was going to try to go find the board policy and I kicked myself off. So sorry.
I believe, if I may, this is Board Member Coleman. I believe it's policy 412. I just looked graduation, and it does mention the distinction, but it does not have the 26 versus the 24.
Perfect.
Okay. Other questions, Catherine, do you have? Okay, anyone else from the board any other questions? Okay, and then Dr. Cleveland?
Well, I just, I do think that in every single aspect of society today, people are asking for some accommodations based on the situation that we're in. And so these seem to be very reasonable accommodations to help our students get through. And so I think they're reasonable. And I think that it's still earning a diploma. And I think they've still done the work that they needed to do to justify walking across that stage and getting that diploma. So I think having that flexibility this year is not only a kind thing to do, I think it's the right thing to do. And so thank you for your support in that area. And hopefully, I would just want to add one thing about the alternative demonstration of competency. There are many districts in New Mexico, including APS, and there are others that have allowed if you pass the course, you are able to graduate. So that's not anything unusual at all. And it's been a kind of an issue over the years. Again, just wanting that higher standard. But there have been students who have passed their classes and didn't reach that level of competency on the testing. And so again, with this year, if there's ever a year to give flexibility in that arena, I think this is the year to do it. So I think those are reasonable accommodations. I know I've had a couple of board members say, want to be flexible, but we still want that diploma to stand for something. I think that diploma still stands for something that students have worked hard for.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Cleveland. Is there anything else from anyone? Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead, Catherine.
So I just want to go to what Dr. Cleveland was saying, and absolutely, I think when the board was looking at that, and we did want to have the higher standard. We wanted to make sure that we really had them showing that demonstration. However, I mean, we are in times that we never thought we would see, and it's really tough on our students and their families, and they absolutely deserve the school diploma from where they graduate. So absolutely, I'm very much in support of this. And I agree with Dr. Cleveland. When the board always had that level when we put that through, that was what we wanted to say and you see it at the college level too. They see the difference from Rancho Public School students who graduate from there versus some others throughout the state. So thank you very much for mentioning that, Dr. Cleveland.
Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion if anyone would like to make a motion.
This is Board Member Catherine Cullen. I will make a motion to approve a temporary adjustment revising the RRPS demonstration of competency plan for the class of 2021.
This is Board Member Jeff Morgan. I will second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. And Jane, can you take a roll call vote for us?
Yes, I will. Vice President Morgan,
Yes.
Secretary Scott,
Yes.
Board Member Cullen,
Yes.
Board Member Coleman,
Yes.
President Galbraith.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you so much again. Appreciate it. For our last item, we'll consider the approval of the capital outlay requests. Melanie Archbeck will present.
Good evening, Madam President Galbraith, members of the board, and Dr. Cleveland. What I have in front of you is the proposed list for the capital outlay requests. I think in this past 9 months, many of you who were not familiar with HVAC received a crash course. So some of this may be familiar. But it's become increasingly apparent during this pandemic just how critical HVAC systems and air circulation is to the health of our staff, students, and community. As you are aware, thanks to the voters, we have a fantastic bond where we're kicking off a lot of the HVAC projects right now. It wasn't enough to cover all of our schools, and so the next best thing is retro commissioning. What that does, it actually goes and looks thoroughly at all of our systems within a particular school, and it will identify any issues that could have been there from the very beginning when it was installed, or issues that have occurred just because of age and deterioration of it. And they would provide recommendations, and we would do repairs based on that to get our systems working as efficiently as possible. And so what I'm proposing here are all the schools that are not on the bond list or that we haven't already conducted retro commissioning. I stand for questions. Is there any questions?
Board, do you have any questions on this?
No.
No, I know that this is Board Member Catherine Cullen. We usually kind of go through a lot of different capital outlay requests as a board and kind of put our priorities on there. But I know that, we're not expecting much out of them this year for capital outlay, though I know they would love to give it to us. But I think that certainly on this one, it being very minimal in our ask is very important this year.
Yes.
Dr. Cleveland, did you want to speak to anything?
I mentioned it earlier in my comments. So, but I do think that two things. As you know, we've asked for some things like this in the past. They've not been willing to do it. But this year, I think that the real difference is the fact that it is related to health and to ventilation and to COVID. And so I think if you all can help us with that and really support the needs for that in terms of safety and in terms of keeping our schools as safe as we can, I think this time they might hear it. The other, to Board Member Coleman's point, is we were told keep it short, keep it simple, and keep it minimal, because there's just not going to be that much money. Most of the money is going to be geared toward trying to hold us harmless operationally. So, but I hope you will talk to the delegation and really and stress the safety piece. Why they really hopefully will consider supporting that this request this year. And I just want to say one other thing. We've all been through a lot of different, difficult times and a lot of work. But I just want you to know that Melanie's had to do and redo again and again and again. And they'll send out one set of rules and regulations, and first we've got to have this filter, and then why are you putting in that filter, and then give us another report. And she has had a monumental task this year in trying to work through these issues. And so I just want to thank her for the time and effort she's put into this, but more importantly, being patient and not just throwing her hands up and walking away from it, because it has been, literally, they have told us the opposite of what they've told us previously. And the workload has been on her and her department to get this pulled together. So all of the reports and things she's had to do for herself, safety and health, particularly related to HVAC and filters and all that. It's thank you, Melanie, for getting that and staying the course and getting that done.
Thank you.
Okay, and I want to say thank you too for all that you've done. It has been crazy. I think every meeting somehow we end up talking about HVAC systems and the changes. So thank you. It's been a crazy year. Melanie, is there anything else that you wanted to add to this, or?
No, I have nothing more to add. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'll entertain a motion again.
Board Member Catherine Cullen, I make a motion to approve the capital outlay requests.
This is Board Member Coleman. I second.
Okay, thank you. Jen, can you take a roll call vote for us?
Yes, I will. Vice President Morgan,
Yes.
Secretary Scott,
Yes.
Board Member Cullen,
Yes.
Board Member Coleman,
Yes.
President Galbraith.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion carries 5-0. Before I go into advanced planning, Dr. Cleveland, is there anything else that that you need to, any closing comments?
No.
Okay. Okay. All right. So with that, our advanced planning, December 21st through January 6th is winter break. January 11th, regular board meeting. January 18th will be Martin Luther King Day. And January 25th is another regular scheduled board meeting. And with that, our meeting tonight is adjourned.
No, do we have a meeting? Do we have the legislative virtual meeting on the 16th?
It's not on the calendar, but you're correct. So the 16th, we do have our legislative meeting virtually at 6. Am I remembering that correct?
Yeah, 6 o'clock.
6
Okay.
o'clock. So everyone please be there for that. And the link, I believe, is in the calendar. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And you can adjourn, but I do want to ask something real quick. Sorry.
It's okay.
That date.
Yeah, Catherine, is there anything else? Is there anything else?
Go
You
ahead.
good?
Yes,
Okay.
this is board member Scott. I would like the link for our Wednesday event resent, because for whatever reason, I don't have mine. So thank you.
Okay, Catherine, anything else? We're adjourned. Okay. Adjourned. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.